Think about the last time you felt that surge of heat, that tightening in your chest when someone said something that felt like a personal attack. Maybe it was a cutting remark from a colleague in a meeting, a harsh word from a loved one during an argument, or the aggressive tone of a stranger in a crowded store. In that moment, the instinct is almost primal, to raise your voice, to fight fire with fire, to defend your ground with equal force. And what happens? The tension escalates, the conflict solidifies. You might even win the point, but you lose your peace, and often you damage the relationship. That reactive loop is something we all know intimately, a cycle that leaves us feeling drained and powerless, controlled by the emotions of the moment. But what if there was another way, a way to stand your ground not with louder noise, but with profound quiet, a way to disarm the entire situation without ever raising your voice? This is not a passive surrender, it is an active application of immense strength. It's the power that the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote about 2,000 years ago when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That strength comes from what he called your inner citadel, an unshakable fortress of calm within you that no external chaos can penetrate. This is the secret core of emotional disarming. It's the realization that your true power lies not in controlling the other person's behavior, but in mastering your own judgments and reactions. When you operate from that inner citadel, you are no longer a puppet whose strings are pulled by someone else's anger or provocation. You become the calm at the center of the storm, and that calm is contagious, it's disarming, it's transformative. The purpose of this video is to explore the timeless Stoic principles that give you access to this power. We are going to move beyond theory and into practical, actionable wisdom you can use in your modern life. We will break down exactly how to de-escalate tense situations through profound self-control, not through volume or aggression. We'll journey through the core Stoic disciplines, how you can master your initial perceptions of an event, how you can learn to withhold immediate assent from your angry thoughts, how to align your desires with what is truly within your control, and how to take action from a place of virtue rather than raw emotion. This is a guide to reclaiming your agency in every interaction. It's about learning to respond instead of react, to build bridges instead of barriers, and to find a quiet strength that is far more powerful than any shout. This is the art of emotionally disarming anyone, and it begins not with a technique, but with a fundamental shift in where you choose to stand. The first step to emotional disarming is realizing you have a choice, even when it feels like you don't. That space, that tiny gap between what someone does and how you respond, is where your true power resides. It's the epicenter of Stoic practice. The ancient teacher Epictetus, born a slave, understood this better than anyone. He laid out a fundamental truth known as the dichotomy of control. He taught that some things are within our power, our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions. In short, everything that is our own doing. And then there are things not within our power, our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and crucially, what other people say and do. Another person's anger, their criticism, their provocation, that falls squarely into the category of things not up to us. It is an external event like the weather. You wouldn't scream at a thunderstorm for ruining your picnic. You would simply seek shelter. The Stoic pause is the mental equivalent of seeking shelter, of recognizing the emotional storm in another person for what it is, an external phenomenon that you do not have to let inside your inner citadel. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the entire philosophy in a single sentence. The event itself is neutral. It only gains power, it only becomes offensive or upsetting when we assign it that meaning through our judgment. Someone sends you a harsh, critical email. The words on the screen are the stimulus, the immediate, hot surge of defensiveness and the impulse to type a furious reply. That is the initial, automatic reaction. But right there, in that sliver of time, lies the opportunity for the pause. The Stoic move is to physically step away from the keyboard, to take a breath. To consciously ask yourself, what judgment am I making about this email? Am I judging it as a personal attack? Am I judging the sender as malicious? And then, the most important question, is that judgment true? Is it helpful? By inserting this pause, you cease to be a puppet jerked around by external events. You become the observer of your own mind, and in that observation, you reclaim your freedom. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're at work and a colleague publicly dismisses your idea in a meeting with a sarcastic tone. The stimulus is their comment. Your body might tense, your face might flush. The automatic reaction might be to interrupt them, to defend your idea with equal sharpness, to prove you're right. This is the path of escalation. Now, apply the pause. Instead of speaking, you take one deliberate breath. In that breath, you remember the dichotomy of control. Their sarcasm is their problem, their external behavior. Your judgment that this is a humiliation is your own. But is it the only possible judgment? Could you choose to see it as their own insecurity showing? Or simply as poor communication skills? By pausing, you create space for these alternative interpretations. You might then respond not with a counterattack, but with a calm question. I'd like to understand your concerns better. Could you elaborate on what specific part of the idea you think needs work? This response, born from a pause, de-escalates the situation entirely. It shifts the dynamic from an emotional battle to a collaborative discussion. Think back to a recent moment in your own life where you reacted impulsively. Maybe it was an argument with a family member that spiraled out of control, or a moment of road rage where you shouted something you later regretted. Recall the heat of that moment. Now, replay it in your mind, but this time, insert the Stoic pause. Imagine yourself taking that one breath, creating that tiny space. What different judgments could you have made about the situation? How might you have responded from a place of choice rather than reflex? This simple act of reflection is the beginning of training your mind. The pause is a muscle, and like any muscle, it grows stronger with practice. It is the foundational skill upon which all other techniques of emotional disarming are built, because without the ability to stop the chain reaction, you cannot choose a different path. What if the person yelling at you isn't your enemy, but a teacher in disguise? This is the profound shift in perception that Stoicism offers, moving us from seeing a provocation to understanding a person. Once you have mastered the pause, the next discipline is to radically reframe how you perceive the individual causing the disturbance. Our initial, raw impression is almost always personal. They are attacking me, they are disrespecting me, they are trying to hurt me. This perception immediately triggers our defenses, but Stoicism asks us to step back and see a more complete and far more compassionate picture. That person is not a villain in your story. They are the protagonist in their own, likely struggling with their own pain, ignorance, or faulty judgments. Marcus Aurelius, in his private meditations, constantly reminded himself to view troublesome people not as obstacles, but as opportunities. He saw them as a gymnasium for his character, a chance to practice patience, understanding, and the very virtue of justice itself. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. Read that again. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. This is not an excuse for bad behavior. It is a diagnosis. It is a shift from moral condemnation to a kind of tragic understanding. A happy, fulfilled, virtuous person does not lash out with cruelty or pettiness. Aggressive behavior is almost always a symptom of internal turmoil, of a mind that is confused about what is truly valuable. When someone is rude to you, it is far less about you and far more about the storm raging within them. Their behavior is a reflection of their inner state, not a valid assessment of your worth. By internalizing this, you can learn to let their words and actions pass through you without sticking, because you recognize they originate from a place of error, not from a place of truth. Let's apply this to a common high-stress scenario, an irate customer service interaction. Imagine you're working a busy shift and a customer approaches the counter, their face flushed, their voice already raised. They begin complaining loudly about a policy, their words laced with personal insults about your competence. The easy, automatic perception is to see a belligerent, unreasonable person making your day difficult. You feel attacked, the provocation is clear, but now apply the discipline of perception. Look past the words, see the frustration, not the insult. This person is likely dealing with a problem that feels immense to them. They might be stressed from a terrible day at work, worried about money, or feeling powerless in a situation they can't control. Their anger at you is a misdirected outburst stemming from that powerlessness. They cannot tell the good, which would be calm, respectful communication, from the evil of venting their frustrations on a convenient target. By perceiving the human being behind the anger, you change the entire dynamic. Your goal is no longer to win an argument or defend yourself against an attacker. Your goal becomes to help a fellow human who is suffering, even if their expression of that suffering is unpleasant. Your response, then, can shift from defensive to inquisitive. Instead of matching their tone or reciting policy coldly, you might say with genuine calm, "It sounds like this situation has been incredibly frustrating for you. I want to help. Let's see what we can do to solve this together." This approach does not concede that they are right. It concedes that their frustration is real. It validates their humanity without endorsing their behavior. This is incredibly disarming because it removes the fuel for their fire. They are expecting a fight, and you are offering collaboration. You are refusing to be the enemy they have cast you as. This principle applies universally. The coworker who takes credit for your work may be acting from a deep-seated insecurity and a fear of being seen as inadequate. The family member who offers constant, unsolicited criticism may be acting from a misguided sense of love and a desire to control a world that feels chaotic to them. So bring this to your own life. Bring to mind someone you consistently find difficult. It could be a relative, a neighbor, a manager. Now make a conscious effort to see past the provocation. Ask yourself what pain might be driving their behavior. What ignorance or confusion about what is truly important could be causing them to act this way? What if their presence in your life is not a curse, but a training exercise assigned to you to build your patience, your empathy, your resilience? This reframing does not mean you become a doormat or tolerate abuse. It means you engage from a position of immense strength, the strength that comes from understanding. You can set boundaries firmly and fairly, but you do so without hatred or agitation in your own heart, because you see the person, not the provocation. You see a flawed human being just like you, doing their best with the faulty tools they have, and in that seeing, you free yourself from the poison of taking their actions personally. Apathy isn't apathy, it's the profound calm that comes from not being hostage to every passing emotion. This is a crucial distinction. Modern apathy implies a lack of care, a cold indifference to the world. Stoic apatheia, on the other hand, is the ultimate form of caring, but caring about the right things. It is the cultivated freedom from the destructive, chaotic passions that cloud judgment and enslave us to external events. Imagine your mind as a lake. Apathy is a frozen, stagnant pond, lifeless and unresponsive. Passion is a storm-tossed sea, waves of anger or fear crashing uncontrollably. But apatheia is the deep, clear, still mountain lake. The wind may blow across its surface, creating ripples. Those are the initial impressions, the natural feelings that arise, but the depths remain undisturbed, calm, and powerful. This inner stillness is your unshakable anchor in any social storm. The chaotic energy of raw passion is inherently weak because it is reactive. It hands control of your inner state over to someone or something else. When you meet a colleague's attempt to provoke you with your own anger, you have essentially given them the remote control to your emotions. They press a button and you erupt. Your reaction is now dependent on their action. The steady power of reasoned calm, which is the essence of apatheia, is the opposite. It is proactive. It says, no matter what you do, my inner peace is my own responsibility. I choose my response based on my principles, not your provocation. This doesn't mean you feel nothing. The Stoics were not robots. It means you feel the initial sting of an insult or the flash of irritation, but you do not grant that feeling permission to dictate your actions. You observe the emotion, you acknowledge its presence, and then you gently set it aside, returning to the solid ground of reason. This inner stillness is not just a personal benefit, it is contagiously disarming. Seneca, who wrote extensively on anger, observed this powerful effect. He noted that anger is a fire that needs fuel to burn. The most effective way to put it out is to refuse to provide any fuel. When someone directs their rage at you, they are throwing emotional gasoline into the air, expecting you to light a match with your own reaction. Your shouted retort, your defensive posture, your visible agitation, that is the match. But when you respond with apatheia, with a calm, measured demeanor, you are essentially standing there without a lighter. The gasoline falls harmlessly to the ground. The other person's anger, deprived of the resistance it expected, has nothing to push against. It often peaks, sputters, and then begins to dissipate because its very existence depends on a fight. Your calm doesn't just protect you, it actively drains the tension from the entire situation. Consider a practical scenario with a colleague who seems to enjoy pushing your buttons. Perhaps in a team meeting, they consistently dismiss your contributions with a subtle, condescending tone. The passionate, reactive response is to feel the heat rise, to interrupt them, to engage in a war of wits to prove your superiority. This turns the meeting into a battlefield and makes you look just as unprofessional. Now apply apatheia. You feel the initial flash of irritation, the ripple on the lake's surface. You take a breath, connecting with the deep calm within. You recognize their behavior for what it is, an attempt to provoke, likely stemming from their own insecurity. Your response, then, is not born of emotion but of reasoned choice. You might simply nod and say, "I appreciate your perspective. To build on that, the data from my report suggests." Or you might even remain silent, offering a slight, knowing smile. By refusing to engage on an emotional level, you rob their provocation of all its power. They are trying to create chaos, and you respond with unassailable order. This is profoundly confusing and disarming for them, as their usual tactics fail completely. To cultivate this anchor, we must first identify the passions that most often seize control of our helm. Think about your own life. Is it a quick temper that flares up in traffic or during disagreements? Is it a deep-seated anxiety about what others think of you that causes you to become defensive at the slightest criticism? Perhaps it's a consuming envy that twists your interactions with a successful peer. Take a moment and identify one of these destructive passions that frequently dictates your behavior. Now imagine what it would look like to cultivate apathia towards it. If your passion is anger, cultivating apathia wouldn't mean you never feel annoyed. It would mean that when the urge to snap arises, you have a practiced ability to pause, to feel the emotion without being the emotion, and to choose a response aligned with your long-term goal of peace, not the short-term impulse to retaliate. It would feel like an inner anchor holding you fast, preventing you from being swept away by the storm. This is a skill built through daily practice, through consciously choosing calm in small irritations so you have the strength for the larger challenges. It is the development of an inner fortress so strong that the shouts of the world outside become nothing more than a distant echo. In a shouting match, the most powerful person is often the one who says nothing. This seems counterintuitive in a world that prizes quick comebacks and winning the argument, but Stoicism teaches us a deeper wisdom about the economy of words. The founders of Stoicism, like Zeno, placed immense value on the virtue of listening and the power of a guarded tongue. They understood that speech is a resource to be spent wisely, not wasted in the heat of passion. Seneca wrote extensively about the dangers of an unbridled tongue, warning that we often regret our words spoken in anger far more than our silence. Strategic silence, then, is not a passive surrender or a sign of weakness. It is an active, disciplined choice to withhold the fuel that an emotional fire needs to keep burning. It is a tool of wisdom that creates a container for the other person's emotion to exhaust itself naturally, without the reinforcement of your own reaction. Think of a heated argument like a wave crashing onto the shore. The initial outburst is the wave at its peak force. If you stand there and shout back, it's like trying to push against the wave with your own force. You'll only get knocked over, and the water will churn violently around you. But if you remain still and silent, you become like a deep, unmovable rock. The wave still hits, but it cannot move you. It splashes and froths, and then, having nothing to push against, it recedes. Your silence provides the space for the other person's emotional wave to peak and begin to subside. They are expecting resistance, a fight, a familiar rhythm of attack and counterattack. When you offer none of that, their script falls apart. The momentum of their anger is broken because it relies on your participation to sustain itself. This silence is not cold or dismissive. When paired with calm eye contact and open body language, it can be a profound form of listening. It communicates, "I hear you. I am not running away, but I will not join you in this chaos." Consider a scenario within a family dynamic, often the most emotionally charged of all. A parent, stressed and worried, begins making unfair accusations about a teenager's habits, blaming them for larger family tensions. The teenager's instinct is to defend themselves immediately, to list all the ways the parent is wrong, to shout back about their own frustrations. This is the predictable path, and it leads to slammed doors and days of resentment. Now, imagine the Stoic alternative. The teenager takes a breath, remembers the power of non-engagement, and simply listens. They allow the parent to vent their entire stream of accusations without interruption. They do not nod in agreement, but they also do not fight back. They just let the words hang in the air. This is incredibly difficult, but its effect is transformative. The parent, after a minute of speaking into this calm silence, often begins to hear their own words more clearly. The lack of a fight disorients them. The emotional charge starts to drain away, leaving room for something else, perhaps fatigue, or even a glimmer of self-awareness. The silence creates a vacuum that often pulls the conversation towards reason. After the outburst has passed, the teenager might then say calmly, "I can see you're really upset. I want to understand, can we talk about this when we're both a little calmer?" This response, born from strategic silence, has a far greater chance of leading to a real resolution than any heated exchange ever could. This practice is about reclaiming your power by choosing not to play a game you cannot win. An argument driven by pure emotion has no winner. There are only two exhausted combatants. By refusing to engage on that level, you unilaterally change the rules. You elevate the interaction from a primal battle to a potential dialogue. Your silence is not a weapon used to punish or stonewall the other person. It is a tool of wisdom used to protect your own peace and to give the situation a chance to de-escalate. It requires immense inner strength, the same apathia we discussed earlier, to withstand the urge to retaliate, to trust that the quiet will do more than any shouted word ever could. To begin integrating this power into your own life, start small. Choose a low-stakes conversation this week, perhaps with a coworker or a friend, and make a conscious decision to practice intentional silence. This doesn't mean being uncommunicative. It means resisting the urge to fill every pause, to immediately respond to every comment. Listen more than you speak. When someone shares an opinion you disagree with, instead of immediately offering a counterpoint, simply sit with their words for a few seconds. Notice the internal pressure to jump in and speak, and then consciously choose to let it pass. Observe how this changes the rhythm of the conversation. Does it become more thoughtful? Do you find yourself understanding their perspective better? Does the other person, sensing your full attention, sometimes clarify or even moderate their own stance? This simple exercise is the training ground for wielding one of the most disarming tools available to you, the profound, strategic power of saying nothing at all. Instead of meeting force with force, learn to parry with a question that opens a door, not a battlefield. After you have mastered the pause and reframed your perception, this is the next natural step in the Stoic art of disarming conflict. It's a move that transforms you from a defensive combatant into a curious investigator, fundamentally shifting the energy of the entire interaction. This technique has deep roots in the Socratic method, where the pursuit of truth was achieved not through declaration, but through thoughtful, probing inquiry. For a Stoic whose ultimate goal is to understand the nature of the world and act with virtue, this approach is perfectly aligned. It moves you from a position of reacting to a provocation to actively seeking to understand the reality of the situation. You are no longer just defending your own perspective. You are engaging in a shared exploration of what is actually true. The magic of a well-placed, empathetic question lies in its ability to interrupt the automatic script of conflict. When someone approaches you with aggression, they are prepared for a fight. Their adrenaline is up, their arguments are primed, and they expect you to either retreat in fear or advance with counter-aggression. A calm, open-ended question completely bypasses this expected script. It does not fight, flee, or freeze. It introduces a third, unexpected option: understanding. A question like, "Can you help me understand what's behind your concern?" or "What part of this is most important for us to resolve first?" forces a cognitive shift. The other person cannot answer it without switching from the emotional, reactive part of their brain to the more reflective, reasoning part. They have to pause, even for a second, to formulate an answer. In that moment, the emotional charge begins to dissipate, and the door to genuine dialogue cracks open. Consider a scenario where your boss is criticizing a project you've poured your heart into. They might say something broad and frustratingly vague, like, "This whole presentation is missing the mark. It just doesn't have the impact we need." The instinctive, passionate reaction is to become defensive. You might want to list all the hours you worked, point out the data you included, or explain your creative choices. This defense, however, often sounds like making excuses and can put your boss even more on the offensive. The dynamic becomes a power struggle, your judgment versus theirs. Now apply the art of the parry. You take a breath, anchor yourself in your inner calm, and respond not with a defense but with a question. You might say calmly and genuinely, "I want to make sure I get this right." What specific part of the presentation feels like it's lacking the impact you're looking for? This simple question achieves several things at once. It shows you are receptive to feedback, not resistant to it. It forces your boss to move from a general criticism to a specific, actionable point. And most importantly, it redirects the energy from a personal critique of your work to a collaborative problem-solving session about the project itself. You are now on the same side, looking at the problem together. This approach is powerful because it appeals to the shared Stoic value of seeking truth. You are not asking the question manipulatively, as a trick to win an argument. You are asking it from a sincere place of wanting to understand the nature of the situation. Is there a valid point buried beneath the aggressive tone? Is there a piece of information you are missing? By asking, you demonstrate the Stoic virtue of wisdom, the willingness to learn and correct your course if necessary. Even if the other person's criticism is entirely unfounded, the act of questioning still serves you. It allows you to remain in a place of principled calm while exposing the lack of substance in their attack. They may struggle to provide a coherent answer, revealing that their anger was more about their own internal state than about your actions. In either case, you maintain your footing and your dignity. To begin weaving this skill into the fabric of your daily interactions, take a moment now to think about a common source of criticism or conflict in your life. It could be with a partner about household responsibilities, with a client about a deliverable, or even with a friend about a misunderstanding. Now, formulate a neutral, curious question you could have in your back pocket for the next time that situation arises. The key is to make it open-ended, meaning it cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. It should begin with what, how, or help me understand. For example, instead of "Are you angry with me?" you might ask, "What about what I said earlier felt upsetting to you?" instead of "Do you not like my idea?" You could try, "How do you see this idea potentially falling short of our goal?" Craft your question to be a tool of exploration, not a weapon of debate. Having this pre-prepared question ready is a form of the Stoic premeditation of evils. You are equipping yourself with a virtuous response before the conflict even begins, ensuring that when the heat of the moment arrives, you are ready to parry with grace and guide the interaction toward higher ground. Let's zoom out, far out, and see this argument from the perspective of the cosmos. This is the essence of the Stoic exercise known as taking the view from above, a powerful mental technique designed to instantly drain the drama from any situation by revealing its true, humble scale. When you are locked in a heated disagreement, your entire world seems to shrink to that single point of conflict. The other person's words feel enormous, the stakes seem impossibly high, and your ego becomes invested in proving you are right. The view from above shatters this illusion. It asks you to perform a thought experiment, to mentally rise above the immediate scene, to see yourself and the other person not as giants clashing, but as tiny figures on a vast stage. Marcus Aurelius was a master of this practice. As the Emperor of Rome, he constantly faced plots, criticisms, and immense pressures that could easily have consumed him with anger or paranoia. In his private journal, he repeatedly guided himself to see the bigger picture. He would remind himself of the vastness of the universe, the billions of people who have lived and died, and the fleeting, insignificant speck of time that his own life, and any current problem truly represented. He wrote to himself, "Remember how much is done by the same nature in the whole, and that everything is happening as you see it now and will happen so in the future." This wasn't about fostering nihilism, but about cultivating a liberating perspective. When you realize that your current conflict is one of countless billions that have occurred throughout human history, and that in 100 years no one will remember it or care, the desperate need to win begins to evaporate. Your ego, which felt so large and important, is gently returned to its proper size. This perspective is a direct antidote to the self-importance that fuels so many arguments. The urge to win is almost always an urge to protect or inflate our sense of self. We feel disrespected, our judgment feels challenged, our territory feels invaded. But from 10,000 feet in the air or from the vantage point of the moon, those personal boundaries look very different. The car that cut you off isn't a personal insult against you as an individual. It's just one vehicle among millions, operated by a flawed human being in a hurry, on a tiny rock orbiting a minor star in an unimaginably large galaxy. This realization doesn't mean the problem isn't real or that you shouldn't address it. It means you can address it without the blinding heat of personal offense. You can act from a place of principle and practicality rather than from a bruised ego. The goal shifts from crushing your opponent to simply navigating a minor obstacle on your path with wisdom and grace. The energy you would have wasted on fury is conserved for things that truly matter: your own virtue, your peace of mind, your relationships with those you love. To see how this works in a modern context, consider that classic flashpoint of modern anger, road rage. You're driving along and another car swerves dangerously close to you, honking its horn aggressively. The immediate, ground-level perception is one of threat and disrespect. Your heart rate spikes, your hands grip the wheel, and an expletive might escape your lips. The urge is to retaliate, to honk back, to gesture, to speed up and show them they can't treat you that way. This is the ego fully engaged in a battle for dominance on the asphalt. Now activate the view from above. In your mind's eye, imagine the scene from the perspective of a drone hovering high above the road. You see your car as a tiny metal box. You see their car as another tiny box. You see the long ribbon of the highway and the countless other boxes moving along it. You see the city sprawling out around you, full of people with their own worries and joys. From this vantage point, the aggressive driver's action is reduced to what it truly is: an insignificant, momentary event. It is a brief, poorly executed lane change in the grand scheme of your day, your life, and human history. This doesn't mean the other driver's action was acceptable, but it completely neutralizes its emotional power over you. You can now choose to simply create a safe distance, letting the moment pass without turning it into a personal crusade. You have disarmed the situation by first disarming your own reaction through a shift in perspective. The true power of this exercise is that it is available to you in an instant, no matter where you are. You don't need to be in a car. You can be in a tense meeting, a family dinner, or reading an inflammatory comment online. The moment you feel that familiar surge of self-righteous indignation, that is your cue to zoom out. See the room you are in as a tiny dot on a map. See the building as one among millions. See the planet spinning through the void. Contemplate the fact that everyone in the conflict, including you, will be gone in the blink of a cosmic eye. This might sound morbid, but for the Stoics, it was a source of immense clarity and urgency. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly: keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. This reflection doesn't tell you to be passive, it tells you to be wise. It asks, Is this momentary conflict, this petty point of pride, really worth the precious time of your one and only life? Almost always the answer is a resounding no. To make this a living practice, not just an interesting idea, take a moment to bring to mind a current minor annoyance. It could be a lingering frustration with a neighbor, a petty resentment towards a coworker, or irritation about a household chore left undone. Now, close your eyes for just a few seconds and apply the view from above. Visualize the situation from a great distance. See the street, the office building, your home, as a small part of a massive, bustling world. See yourself and the other person as two small figures going about your days. How does this shift in scale change the emotional weight of the issue? Does the need to be right about this specific thing feel as urgent? Does the annoyance hold the same sharpness, or does it begin to feel softer, more manageable, even a little trivial? This is not about dismissing your feelings, but about contextualizing them. By regularly practicing this mental zoom out, you build a reflex of perspective. You train yourself to default to a wider, calmer vantage point, ensuring that when the next real conflict arises, you won't be a prisoner of the moment. You will already be viewing it from the peaceful silence of the inner citadel where true strength resides. What if you could thank the person trying to upset you? This is the radical, almost paradoxical heart of the Stoic concept of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. It is the ultimate reframing exercise, moving beyond simply tolerating or enduring difficulty to actively embracing it as a necessary and even welcome part of your journey. While the phrase is famously associated with Friedrich Nietzsche, who wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati," that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. The seed of this idea is deeply Stoic. The Stoics believed that the universe is governed by a rational, divine order, often called logos. Everything that happens, therefore, is part of that intricate web of cause and effect. To rage against an event is to rage against the very fabric of reality itself, a futile and exhausting endeavor. Amor Fati is the decision to stop fighting the current and to instead learn to swim with it, recognizing that the current itself is what makes the journey possible. This philosophy transforms every obstacle, including a difficult person, from a barrier into a training ground. Marcus Aurelius offered perhaps the clearest Stoic expression of this when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that again because it's a complete reversal of conventional thinking. The obstacle is not a detour from your path, it is the path. The person who challenges you, who criticizes you, who seems intent on making your life difficult, is not an interruption to your growth, they are the very instrument of it. They are the resistance that strengthens your patience, the provocation that deepens your empathy, the mirror that forces you to confront your own triggers and insecurities. By welcoming them as a teacher, you perform a psychological jujitsu that completely neutralizes their power to offend you. You remove the resistance they expect, and in doing so, you disarm them at the most fundamental level. Let's bring this to life with a common workplace dynamic, the competitive coworker. Imagine a colleague who consistently tries to one-up you in meetings, subtly undermines your contributions to the boss, or takes credit for shared successes. The natural human reaction is resentment. You see them as an adversary, a threat to your progress and recognition. This perception puts you in a constant state of defensive vigilance, draining your energy and polluting your work environment. Your entire focus becomes about countering them, watching them, and feeling aggrieved by them. Now apply Amor Fati. Instead of seeing them as a problem, you consciously reframe them as your unofficial, unpaid personal trainer for virtue. Their attempts to provoke you are not attacks, they are drills. Each time they try to rattle you, it is an opportunity to practice the Stoic Pause. Each snide comment is a chance to practice the discipline of perception, to see the insecurity and fear driving their behavior. Their competitiveness becomes the very thing that pushes you to be more meticulous in your work, more collaborative with others, and more graceful under pressure. By embracing this role for them, you achieve two powerful things. First, you internally disarm the situation. The sting of their actions vanishes because you are no longer interpreting them as malicious attacks, but as challenging exercises. You might even find a sense of gratitude for the chance to practice your Stoic muscles in a real-world scenario. Second, your external behavior will inevitably change. Because you are no longer reacting from a place of resentment, you stop feeding the cycle of conflict. You might respond to their undermining with genuine praise for their own contributions. You might proactively include them in projects, demonstrating confidence rather than fear. This calm, unassailable demeanor is profoundly confusing to someone who thrives on rivalry. Without an opponent to fight, their competitive energy has nowhere to go. You haven't defeated them, you have simply changed the game entirely, moving from a battle of egos to a demonstration of character. This practice extends far beyond the office. A critical family member is not a source of pain but a drill instructor for your resilience and your ability to receive feedback without losing your center. A bureaucratic delay is not a frustration but a forced lesson in patience and focusing on what you can control. Even a personal failure or a loss can be loved not for the pain it causes, but for the humility and the redirection it offers. Amor Fati is the ultimate act of agency in a world you cannot control. You may not choose the obstacle, but you always choose how you relate to it. To love your fate is to declare that nothing that happens to you will be wasted, that every experience, especially the difficult ones, will be woven into the tapestry of your strength and wisdom. So bring this concept into your own life right now. Identify one current obstacle you are facing. It could be a person, a situation, a personal limitation. Now, instead of listing all the reasons it's a problem, engage in a conscious act of reframing. Ask yourself, if I were to embrace this obstacle with Amor Fati, what hidden opportunity does it contain? How is this difficulty secretly strengthening a muscle I need to develop? Is it teaching me patience, persistence, forgiveness, humility? By searching for the gift within the challenge, you perform an alchemy on your own mind. You transform leaden resentment into golden opportunity. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and become a student of your fate, actively learning from every single thing life places in your path. This shift doesn't make the obstacle disappear, but it changes you in relation to it, and that change is the source of a power that no external circumstance can ever take away. In Stoicism, kindness is a strategic choice, a display of strength that confounds aggression. Our culture often mistakes gentleness for passivity, viewing a kind response as a white flag of surrender. But from a Stoic perspective, rooted firmly in the virtue of justice, kindness is the opposite of weakness. It is the conscious decision to treat others with the dignity they are due as fellow rational beings, even when they are failing to act rationally themselves. This isn't about being a pushover. It's about adhering to your own principles so firmly that another person's bad behavior cannot knock you off your ethical course. Justice for the Stoics meant giving each person their due, and what is due to every human being simply by virtue of their shared capacity for reason is a baseline of respect. When someone acts with hostility, they are acting unjustly. If you respond in kind, you are simply mirroring their injustice, abandoning your own virtue to join them in their chaos. But when you respond with consistent, reasoned kindness, You hold up a mirror that reflects their behavior back to them, not as a weapon, but as an invitation to remember their own humanity. This approach is powerfully disarming because it refuses to accept the premise of the conflict. Aggression expects and requires a similar energy to sustain itself. It operates on a primitive logic of threat and counter-threat. Kindness, when deployed from a place of inner strength, introduces a completely different and unexpected variable into that equation. It exposes the irrationality of the attack by demonstrating that there is, in fact, no attack necessary. The ancient Stoic hierarchs illustrated this beautifully with his concept of the circles of concern. He said we should see ourselves at the center of a series of concentric circles. The innermost circle is our own mind and body. The next circle contains our immediate family, then extended family, then local community, and so on, outward to encompass all of humanity. The task of a virtuous person, he argued, is to continually draw these outer circles inward, to treat the stranger with the consideration we would show a cousin, and the acquaintance with the care we would show a sibling. When someone is hostile to you, they are pushing you away, treating you as if you belong in a distant outer circle. Responding with kindness is the active practice of pulling them closer, of acknowledging your shared membership in the circle of humanity. This act of moral strength often leaves aggression bewildered and disoriented, having lost the familiar footing of a fight. Consider a mundane but potent example. Someone cuts in front of you in a long line. The immediate, passionate reaction is one of indignation. Your heart rate jumps, and the impulse is to tap them on the shoulder with a sharp, "Hey, the line's back there." Your tone is likely to be laced with anger, a clear challenge. This immediately sets up a dynamic of public confrontation. The other person, now embarrassed and defensive, will likely either argue back or sullenly retreat, and the entire atmosphere becomes charged with tension. You might feel a fleeting sense of victory, but it's a victory that costs you your peace. Now apply the shield of kindness. You take that crucial Stoic pause, reconnect with your inner citadel, and choose a response rooted in justice, giving this person the respectful correction they are due, even if they haven't earned it. You might say in a calm, neutral tone, just loud enough for them to hear, "I believe the line actually ends back there. This statement is not weak." It is a simple, factual assertion of a boundary, but its power lies in the absence of hostile emotion. You are not attacking their character, you are pointing out a shared reality. The lack of anger in your voice makes it incredibly difficult for them to respond with anger. They might mumble an apology and move, or they might try to argue, but your continued calm, your shield of kindness, makes their aggression look absurd and out of place. You have maintained your dignity, upheld a social contract, and de-escalated the situation without ever raising your voice. This principle scales to much more significant conflicts. Imagine dealing with a neighbor who constantly complains about trivial matters. Responding with frustration or sarcasm only deepens the feud, turning your home into a battlefield. The Stoic approach, guided by justice and kindness, would be to listen patiently to their complaint, even if it's unfounded, and then say something like, "I understand this is bothering you. Let's see what we can do to find a solution that works for both of us." This doesn't mean you capitulate to unreasonable demands. It means you engage the person, not the hostility. You appeal to their better nature by first assuming it exists. You treat them as a rational being capable of cooperation, and in doing so, you create the possibility for that very cooperation to emerge. Often, people act aggressively because they feel unseen and unheard. Your kindness, your willingness to listen and engage fairly, satisfies that deep need and removes the primary fuel for their behavior. To integrate this powerful tool, take a moment to reflect on your own past. Can you recall a specific time when you consciously chose to respond to meanness or frustration with kindness instead of retaliating? It doesn't have to be a major event. Maybe a cashier was short with you, and you chose to respond with a gentle smile and a polite thank you. Perhaps a child was having a tantrum, and you responded with a hug instead of a shout. What was the outcome? In most cases, the energy of the encounter shifted dramatically. The other person's demeanor likely softened, the tension dissolved. And importantly, how did it make you feel? Stronger, more in control, more aligned with the person you aspire to be. That feeling is the essence of Stoic strength. It is the proof that kindness, far from being a weakness, is one of the most formidable shields you can carry into the conflicts of daily life, protecting both your peace and your principles. Before you react, narrate the event to yourself like a neutral news reporter. This is the core of a profoundly simple yet transformative Stoic practice known as objective description. It is the mental discipline of stripping away the layers of dramatic interpretation and emotional judgment we instinctively add to every event, and instead seeing the raw facts for what they are. The foundational insight here comes directly from Epictetus, who delivered one of the most crucial statements in all of Stoicism. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. Let that sink in. The event itself is neutral. It is our internal narration, the story we tell ourselves about the event, that generates our suffering, our anger, and our desire to retaliate. The argument doesn't hurt you. Your judgment that you have been disrespected does. The criticism doesn't wound you. Your belief that it diminishes your worth does. Objective description is the tool that allows you to separate the pure event from the poisonous story, giving you the clarity to respond from reason rather than react from raw emotion. When you feel that initial surge of heat in a conflict, your mind immediately begins constructing a narrative. It's a story where you are the protagonist and the other person is often cast as the villain. They are attacking you, disrespecting you, trying to humiliate you. These are all value-laden judgments, interpretations that are not inherent in the event itself. They are your subjective additions. The Stoic practice is to pause this internal movie director and become a forensic observer instead. You shift from a dramatic, emotional language to a plain, factual one. The statement, "he is attacking me," is packed with accusation and victimhood. The objective description, "his voice is raised and he is using sharp language," is a simple observation. The first version locks you into a battle. The second version describes a phenomenon, giving you the space to choose your next move. You are no longer a character trapped in a story you didn't write. You are the author, calmly assessing the situation. This skill is particularly vital when receiving critical feedback, a scenario that triggers defensiveness in almost everyone. Imagine your manager reviews a report you submitted and says, "This section is weak and lacks the necessary depth." The automatic, judgment-laden narrative might scream in your head, "She hates my work, she thinks I'm incompetent, this is a personal attack on my abilities." This interpretation is filled with catastrophic thinking and personalization. It immediately puts you on the defensive, flooding your system with stress hormones and preparing you for a fight or flight response. Your subsequent reaction is likely to be defensive, emotional, and unproductive. Now, apply the practice of objective description. Restate the event in bare-bones facts. "My manager stated that the section on market analysis requires more supporting data." Do you feel the difference? The emotional charge evaporates. The statement is no longer a verdict on your worth. It is a piece of feedback about a specific part of a document. It transforms a perceived threat into a solvable problem. From this calm, objective space, you can now respond effectively. "I understand. Could you clarify which specific data point you feel would strengthen the analysis? This shifts the interaction from a conflict to a collaboration. The power of this practice lies in its ability to break the chain of assumption and projection. We constantly project our own insecurities and past experiences onto present events. If you have a deep-seated fear of being seen as inadequate, even mild criticism will be filtered through that fear and amplified into a major attack. Objective description forces you to confront the evidence, and only the evidence. It asks the question, what actually happened separate from what I feel happened? This is not about suppressing emotions. It's about creating a gap between the stimulus and your emotional response, allowing you to process the feeling without being controlled by it. You acknowledge the initial sting, but you refuse to let that sting write the entire story. By narrating the facts, you anchor yourself in reality, a reality that is almost always less threatening than the nightmare scenarios our judgmental minds can concoct. To make this a living part of your Stoic toolkit, take a moment now to practice. Bring to mind a recent event that upset you. It could be a disagreement with a partner, a frustrating exchange with a customer, or even a perceived slight from a friend. Now grab a piece of paper or just open a note on your phone and write down 2 descriptions of the event. First, write the dramatic, judgment-filled version, the one your emotions crafted in the heat of the moment. Use words like unfair, rude, disrespectful, always, never. Then, directly below it, write the objective description. Stick solely to observable facts. Who was there? What was said, using the most direct quotes possible? What actions were taken? Strip out all adjectives that imply motive or moral judgment. Describe it as if you were a security camera or a court stenographer, capturing only what could be seen and heard by a completely neutral third party. The act of physically writing these 2 versions side by side is a revelation. It makes the distinction between fact and fiction starkly clear. You will see how much of your suffering was generated not by the event, but by the story you attached to it. This simple exercise, repeated, trains your mind to default to the objective view, giving you back the narrative control that is the birthright of a rational, disciplined mind. Imagine your mind is a fortified castle. No one can get in unless you lower the drawbridge. This powerful metaphor, central to the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, describes what the Stoics called your inner citadel. It is that inviolable core of your being, a sanctuary of reason and virtue that exists entirely independent of the chaos swirling outside its walls. Your reputation, your possessions, the words and actions of others, these are all external, existing outside the castle gates. They can make noise, they can even lay siege, but they cannot breach the walls without your conscious permission. The true source of your power to emotionally disarm anyone lies not in controlling the siege, but in your unwavering decision to remain safely within, governed by your own reasoned principles. Emotional disarming, then, is the practiced art of keeping that drawbridge firmly raised. It is the conscious choice to not let the insults, the provocations, or the aggression of another person cross the threshold into your inner world, where they could ransack your peace. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire amidst constant political intrigue and military campaigns, relied on this concept daily. He wrote to himself, "You can retreat into yourself now." No other retreat offers more quiet and relaxation than your own soul, especially when it is stocked with orderly thoughts. This retreat is not an escape from reality. It is a strategic withdrawal to the command center. It is where you regain your bearings, consult your principles, and choose your response from a place of unshakable calm, rather than being ambushed by your own raw reactions. The tranquility he speaks of is not the absence of noise, but the presence of a profound inner order that no external disorder can disrupt. When you are rooted in this citadel, you can observe the chaos outside with a kind of detached clarity. You see the shouting not as a personal threat that demands a counterattack, but as a storm happening on the other side of your fortified walls. You are safe, you are dry, and you are in command. Consider the modern battleground of a chaotic business meeting. Tensions are high, voices are raised, personal attacks are being hurled across the table. The collective energy is one of panic and aggression. The automatic, unguarded response is to get swept up in the current, to raise your own voice, to defend your territory, to fight for your point. This is the equivalent of throwing open the castle gates and charging out into the fray, leaving your core principles undefended. The Stoic practice, however, is to mentally retreat into your inner citadel while remaining physically present. In the midst of the shouting, you take a silent, inward breath. You consciously remind yourself, this noise is outside my walls. My worth is not determined by the outcome of this argument. My goal is to act with wisdom and justice, not to win. From this centered place, your outward participation changes entirely. You might listen more intently instead of preparing your rebuttal. When you do speak, your voice is likely to be calmer, your words more measured. This unexpected calm can act as a gravitational force, slowly pulling the entire room's energy down from its fever pitch. You haven't checked out, you have checked into your highest self, and that presence becomes the most disarming force in the room. The strength of your citadel, however, depends entirely on what you have used to build its walls. A fortress made of sand will crumble at the first sign of pressure. So what are the building materials of an unbreachable inner citadel? They are your deepest, most non-negotiable values and principles. For the Stoics, these were the cardinal virtues: wisdom, the commitment to see things as they are, not as your fears or desires paint them; courage, the strength to endure difficulty without being corrupted by it; justice, the unwavering decision to treat everyone, even adversaries, with fairness; and temperance, the self-discipline to exercise moderation in all things. Your personal citadel might also be fortified by principles like integrity, compassion, or a dedication to lifelong learning. The key is that these are values you choose for yourself, independent of external validation. They are the immutable laws of your inner kingdom. When a provocation comes, you don't have to scramble to figure out how to react. You simply consult the principles that form your walls. The question shifts from, how can I make this person stop, to, how can I respond in a way that is aligned with my virtue? To make this concept your own, take a moment now to close your eyes and visualize this inner citadel. See its strong, high walls. What are they made of? Is it the stone of your personal integrity, the iron of your commitment to truth? Now, look to the principles that guard the gate. What values are so important to you that you would never compromise them, even under pressure? Perhaps it's a promise to never knowingly cause harm, or a vow to always seek understanding before judgment. These are the sentinels on your walls. Finally, visualize the peaceful courtyard within. This is your center of calm, the place you can always return to. The more vividly you can imagine this sanctuary, the more real it becomes as a psychological resource. The next time you feel the first flush of anger or anxiety, let that feeling be the signal to retreat. Don't wait for the full-scale attack. Take one deep breath and picture yourself stepping back behind those strong walls, looking out at the disturbance from a place of complete safety. The conflict hasn't disappeared, but it has been returned to its proper size as an external event that you now have the space and clarity to address with the full power of your unassailable self. That feeling of certainty when you're angry, it's often the first trap. Your mind presents you with a thought, an impression that feels like an undeniable fact. They did that on purpose to undermine me. This situation is a complete disaster. These impressions arrive with such force and emotional conviction that we tend to accept them without question, as if they were objective reality broadcast directly into our consciousness. But Stoicism introduces a life-changing concept right here, in this split second of automatic belief. It's called the discipline of assent, and it is the crucial mental muscle that allows you to intercept these impressions before they hijack your behavior. Assent is your inner gatekeeper. It is the power of saying yes or no to the thoughts that pop into your head. Most of us live our lives giving automatic assent to every negative impression, especially in moments of conflict. We feel the heat of anger and instantly believe the story that accompanies it. The Stoic practice is to insert a moment of pause between the arrival of the impression and your granting of assent. You learn to treat that initial, emotionally charged thought not as a command, but as a suggestion, a hypothesis that requires examination before you buy into it. The ancient teacher Epictetus, who provided some of the most detailed instructions on this practice, used a powerful analogy. He said that our impressions are like a visitor knocking at the door of our mind. You are not obligated to fling the door open and let them in. You can first ask, "Who are you? What do you want?" You get to decide if this visitor is a friend bringing truth or a troublemaker spreading lies. He taught that the task of the philosopher, the person seeking a good life, is not to have no impressions but to have them, and then to refuse assent to those that are false. This is the core of emotional self-defense. When someone's action creates an impression in you, like "he disrespected me," that is just the knock at the door. The automatic, untrained response is to throw the door open, let the impression of disrespect rush in, and immediately start furnishing a whole room for it with feelings of outrage and plans for retaliation. The disciplined response is to stand at the door and ask, "Is this impression accurate? Is it the whole story? Is it helpful for me to believe this right now?" Let's make this intensely practical with a common relationship scenario. You send your partner a text message, something you felt was important or thoughtful, and you get no reply. Hours go by. The initial impression that arrives, often with a sinking feeling in your stomach, might be, "They are ignoring me. They don't care about what I have to say." This impression carries a powerful emotional charge. It feels like rejection. If you give it your immediate assent, if you accept it as absolute truth, your entire evening is now poisoned. You might become sullen, or you might fire off a follow-up text laced with accusation. "I guess you're too busy to reply to me." This reaction, born from an unexamined impression, can spark a completely unnecessary conflict. Now apply the discipline of assent. The impression, "They are ignoring me," knocks. Instead of letting it in, you pause at the door. You question the impression. You introduce alternative, equally plausible hypotheses. Are they actually busy in a meeting? Could their phone have died? Might they be dealing with a stressful situation and simply haven't had the mental space to respond thoughtfully? By generating these alternatives, you are not denying the possibility that they saw the message and chose not to reply. You are simply refusing to grant sole authority to the most negative interpretation. You are gathering evidence before rendering a verdict. This act of questioning is not about naive optimism. It is about intellectual rigor. It is about aligning your beliefs with reality, not with your fears. When you withhold immediate assent from the negative impression, you create space for a more reasoned response. Instead of the accusatory text, you might later simply say, "Hey, just wanted to make sure you got my message earlier. No rush, just checking in." This response, born from a suspended judgment, maintains connection instead of creating division. It comes from a place of curiosity rather than accusation. The power here is monumental. You are no longer a passive recipient of your own emotional weather system. You become the meteorologist, observing the patterns, understanding their causes, and choosing how to prepare for them. You stop being a slave to the first thought that enters your mind and start being the curator of your mental landscape. This practice requires us to become humble about the reliability of our own perceptions. Our minds are meaning-making machines that often jump to conclusions based on past wounds and ingrained biases. The impression of being ignored might feel so certain because it taps into an old insecurity, not because it accurately reflects the current situation. The discipline of assent is the tool that allows us to catch these cognitive distortions in real time. It is the difference between living in a world of perceived slights and constant threats, and living in a world of neutral events that we have the power to interpret with wisdom. Epictetus reminded us that it is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about events. The discipline of assent is the practice of taking responsibility for those judgments, of scrutinizing them before we allow them to dictate our peace of mind. To start building this essential muscle today, take a quiet moment to reflect. Cast your mind back over the last 24 hours and identify one negative impression you experienced. It doesn't have to be a major event. Perhaps a coworker walked past your desk without saying hello, and the impression was they're angry with me. Maybe you made a small mistake at work, and the impression was I'm incompetent. Whatever it was, bring it to mind. Now, replay the moment, but this time, insert the pause. Imagine yourself as the gatekeeper of your mind. That initial negative thought is the visitor at the door. Instead of letting it rush in, hold it there, and then deliberately generate 2 or 3 alternative explanations for the same event. If the impression was, they're angry with me, what else could be true? They might be preoccupied with a personal problem. They could be rushing to a deadline and didn't even see me. They may have been lost in thought. The goal is not necessarily to find the right answer, but to break the automatic chain that links an external event to a negative internal story. By practicing this simple exercise of questioning your impressions, you begin to rewire a lifetime of habitual assent. You reclaim the space between stimulus and response, and in that space, you find not only the power to disarm others, but more importantly, the power to disarm your own most disruptive thoughts. Courage here isn't about fighting, it's about the strength to not flee into anger or fear. This is a crucial distinction that lies at the heart of Stoic virtue. When we typically think of courage, we imagine a soldier charging into battle or someone shouting down an opponent. But Stoic courage is an internal fortress. It is the fortitude to remain rooted in your principles when faced with pressure, to endure discomfort without being swayed from what you know is right. It's the quiet power that allows you to hear harsh words without letting them dictate your response, to stand your ground without needing to push anyone else off of theirs. This form of courage is not loud or aggressive. It is profoundly still and unshakable. It's the difference between a mighty oak that withstands a storm by bending without breaking, and a rigid, brittle tree that snaps under the same pressure. Stoic courage is flexible in its methods but unwavering in its core, allowing you to adapt to the situation without compromising your integrity. The Roman orator Cicero, who was deeply influenced by Stoic philosophy, wrote extensively about courage as one of the 4 cardinal virtues. He distinguished this virtuous courage from what might simply be a reckless boldness. For Cicero and the Stoics, true courage was always paired with wisdom and justice. It wasn't just about enduring hardship, it was about enduring it for the right reasons and in the right way. A soldier who fights for an unjust cause is not courageous in the Stoic sense, they are merely dangerous. but a person who speaks a difficult truth at a personal cost, who remains calm in the face of insults, or who holds a boundary with gentle firmness, that person is exercising Stoic courage. This courage is the anchor that prevents you from being tossed about by the storms of other people's emotions or your own reactive fears. It allows you to choose your response consciously, aligning it with your long-term values rather than short-term impulses. Consider a scenario where you must deliver unwelcome news. Perhaps you are a manager who has to inform a team member that they will not be receiving a promotion they were counting on. The path of avoidance, driven by a fear of conflict, would be to delay the conversation, sugarcoat the truth, or delegate the unpleasant task to someone else. The path of aggression, driven by a different kind of fear, the fear of appearing weak, might be to deliver the news bluntly, coldly, without empathy, building a wall of formality to protect yourself. Stoic courage charts a third path. It gives you the strength to initiate the difficult conversation directly and with compassion. You prepare for it, understanding that the other person may react with disappointment or even anger. During the conversation, you stand firm in the reality of the decision without being rigid in your demeanor. You listen to their frustration without becoming defensive. You explain the reasons calmly, not to justify yourself but to provide clarity. You might say, "This was a difficult decision, and I understand this news is disappointing. While this specific promotion isn't available now, here is what we can work on together to strengthen your path forward." This approach requires immense courage because it makes you vulnerable. You are choosing to sit with the discomfort of someone else's negative emotions without either running away from them or trying to shut them down. You are holding your professional ground while acknowledging their human experience, and in doing so, you maintain not only your dignity but theirs as well. This principled courage is what allows you to disarm potential conflict before it even begins. The other person may have been preparing for a fight, expecting either a cowardly avoidance or a defensive aggression. When they encounter your calm, principled stance, their expected script falls apart. There is no opponent to fight against, only a person engaged in a difficult but necessary dialogue. Your courage to face the situation head-on with empathy and integrity removes the adversarial energy and transforms it into a shared, albeit challenging, reality. This is courage in action, not as a weapon but as a shield that protects the truth and preserves the relationship. Now, bring this concept into your own life. Where is there an opportunity for you to apply more of this principled courage? Is there a difficult conversation you have been avoiding with a family member about a sensitive topic? Is there a boundary you need to set at work that you fear might be met with resistance? Or perhaps it's an internal battle, the courage to face a personal flaw without crumbling into self-criticism or fleeing into distraction. Identify one situation where your current pattern is either avoidance, letting something slide that truly matters to you, or aggression, pushing your point too hard and creating unnecessary friction. What would it look like to choose the middle path of Stoic courage? It wouldn't mean giving up what is important to you. It would mean pursuing it with a calm, firm persistence that is not derailed by fear or anger. It would mean standing in your truth without needing everyone else to agree with it. This is the courage that builds lasting respect, both from others and, most importantly, from yourself. It is the quiet strength that proves true power does not have to shout. Stoics don't expect the worst, they rehearse for it, so it holds no power over them. This is the essence of a powerful mental exercise known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils or misfortunes. Far from being a pessimistic practice of dwelling on everything that could go wrong, it is a proactive drill for the mind, a form of psychological inoculation that strengthens your resilience by exposing you to challenges in the safety of your own imagination before you ever have to face them in reality. The core idea is disarmingly simple. By regularly visualizing potential difficulties, setbacks, or conflicts, you systematically remove the element of surprise. When a feared event actually occurs, it doesn't hit you with the force of a sudden ambush. It feels more like walking onto a stage where you have already rehearsed your lines. The shock value is gone, and in its place is a familiar scenario that you are prepared to navigate with reason rather than panic. Seneca, one of the most eloquent Stoic philosophers, was a strong advocate of this practice. He advised deliberately contemplating the loss of possessions, status, and even loved ones, not to breed fear, but to foster a profound appreciation for what we have while simultaneously building a fortress of calm against future misfortune. He wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. This is the ultimate goal. The premeditation is not an invitation for anxiety to move in, it is an eviction notice." By visiting a potential problem in your mind first, you become the architect of your response. You are no longer a passive victim of circumstance, blindsided by events and reacting from a place of raw, unprocessed emotion. Instead, you become an active participant in your fate, meeting difficulty with a prepared and principled stance. Let's apply this directly to the art of emotional disarming. Imagine you have a family gathering coming up, and there is one relative whose comments always seem to find a way to get under your skin. Perhaps they make subtle jabs about your career choices, your parenting style, or your life decisions. In the past, these encounters have left you feeling flustered, angry, and often regretting your reactive responses. This is the perfect scenario for premeditatio malorum. Instead of dreading the event and hoping for the best, you actively engage in a mental rehearsal. You sit down in a quiet space a day or two before and vividly imagine the interaction. You picture the setting, the sounds, the expressions. You imagine your relative making their typical provocative remark. But here is the crucial shift. In this rehearsal, you are the director. You don't just imagine the stimulus, you meticulously plan and visualize your ideal response. This isn't about scripting a witty comeback to win an argument. It's about scripting your inner state and your outward demeanor. You visualize yourself hearing the comment and feeling the initial sting, but then you see yourself taking the Stoic pause. You feel your breath steadying. You watch as you access the discipline of perception, seeing the comment not as a truth about you, but as a reflection of their own concerns or habits. Then you rehearse your verbal response. It might be a simple, non-engaging acknowledgement like, "That's an interesting perspective," followed by a change of subject. It might be a calm question that pivots to them, "What's made you think about that lately?" Or it could be a gentle but firm boundary, "I'd prefer we talk about something we can both enjoy." The power of this rehearsal lies in the neural pathways it creates. When you vividly imagine an action, your brain fires in similar ways as when you physically perform it. You are quite literally practicing calmness, building a mental muscle memory for a virtuous response. When you arrive at the actual gathering, the dynamic is transformed. The relative makes their remark, and instead of being hijacked by surprise and emotion, you experience a moment of recognition. It's as if you've been here before. The path of the reactive outburst is still there, but right beside it is a new, well-trodden path of the calm, prepared response you rehearsed. Because you have already walked this path in your mind, choosing it in reality requires far less effort. The temptation to retaliate loses its grip because you have already lived through the more satisfying outcome of maintaining your peace. Your relative, expecting the usual defensive reaction, is met instead with an unshakable calm. Their provocation fails to land, and the energy they intended to create fizzles out, disarmed by your lack of participation in the familiar drama. To integrate this powerful tool into your own life, take a moment right now to look at your upcoming week. Identify one potentially challenging interaction you are anticipating. It might be a performance review with your manager, a difficult conversation with a friend, or even a phone call you've been putting off. Now make a commitment to yourself to spend just 5 minutes in Premeditatio Malorum. Find a quiet spot, close your eyes, and run the scenario in your mind like a movie. But in this movie, you are the hero who remains calm and principled. Visualize the other person's words or actions. Then, vividly see and feel yourself pausing, breathing, and accessing your inner citadel. Hear yourself responding with a tone that is measured and a choice of words that aligns with your values, whether that means setting a boundary, asking a clarifying question, or simply listening without immediate reaction. This small investment of time is not preparation for failure. It is an act of empowerment. It is you taking control of the narrative before it can control you, ensuring that when you step into that real-life situation, you do so not as a nervous participant, but as a prepared practitioner of quiet strength. The only thing you can ever disarm is the moment right in front of you. This simple truth is the gateway to a profound Stoic practice that aligns perfectly with modern mindfulness, the unwavering focus on the present moment. We spend so much of our mental energy living in two imaginary places: the past, which we cannot change, and the future, which we cannot control. In a conflict, this mental time travel is the primary fuel for emotional escalation. Your mind isn't just processing the words being spoken, it's simultaneously replaying a highlight reel of every past offense from this person, and projecting a terrifying movie of all the worst-case outcomes this argument could create. This internal noise of resentment and anxiety completely drowns out the actual reality of the situation, forcing you to react not to the person in front of you, but to the ghosts of your past and the phantoms of your future. Stoic mindfulness is the decision to shut off that noise and attend solely to what is actually happening, right here, right now. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this discipline, writing, "Confine yourself to the present." He wasn't suggesting ignorance of the past or a lack of planning for the future. He was advocating for the mental clarity that comes when you stop allowing past narratives and future anxieties to dominate your current perceptions. When you are fully present, you see the situation with a reporter's objectivity, not a dramatist's flair. You are able to hear the specific words being used, observe the body language, and sense the emotional tone without the distorting filter of, "This is just like last time," or "If I don't win this, it will be a disaster." This focused attention is what allows you to access all the other Stoic tools: the pause, the objective description, the empathetic question, because your cognitive resources are no longer being drained by a war you are fighting on two other fronts. Consider how this transforms an argument. You're in a disagreement with your partner. The topic might be something familiar, like finances or household responsibilities. As they speak, your mind doesn't stay with their words. It instantly flashes back to a similar argument from 3 months ago, layering that old frustration onto the current moment. Then it leaps forward, imagining where this is headed: a night of silence, a weekend of tension, a permanent rift. Armed with this heavy baggage from the past and future, your response is no longer about the specific point they are making now. It becomes a loaded reaction to the entire history and anticipated future of your conflicts. Your tone becomes sharper, your words more accusatory, because you aren't just fighting about the dishes, you're fighting every unresolved issue and every feared outcome all at once. Now apply the anchor of the present moment. You make a conscious choice to plant your awareness firmly in the now. You notice the impulse to time travel, and you gently guide your focus back. You listen to their sentence, and only that sentence. You observe the expression on their face in this moment, not the one you remember from last time. You feel the sensation of your feet on the floor, the breath in your lungs. This grounded presence creates a space of surprising clarity. Because you are only dealing with the single point they are raising right now, the problem often feels more manageable. You can address the specific issue without dragging in the entire weight of your shared history. Your response can be precise, measured, and relevant to the actual conversation happening, which is inherently disarming. It's difficult for the other person to sustain a generalized attack when you are consistently bringing the focus back to a single, present, solvable point. This practice is the ultimate expression of the Stoic focus on what is within your control. The past is gone, it is an external, a memory that you have no power to alter. The future is not yet here, it is a set of possibilities you can influence but never command. The only realm where your agency is absolute is the present moment. It is the only place where you can actually exercise your power to choose your judgment, your assent, and your action. By anchoring yourself here, you are positioning yourself in the only arena where you can truly be effective. You are no longer wasting your energy shouting at ghosts or building fortifications against imaginary future invasions. You are dealing with the reality directly in front of you, and from that place of full engagement, your responses become far more powerful and appropriate. To make this a tangible part of your day, see your next conversation as a training ground. It doesn't have to be a conflict. Even a simple chat with a coworker or a phone call with a friend will do. As you engage, make a quiet intention to notice when your mind wanders. You'll be surprised how often it happens. You might be listening to them describe their weekend, and suddenly you're planning your grocery list or rehearsing what you need to say in your next meeting. That's perfectly normal. The practice isn't to never have your mind wander. It's to catch it when it does and gently guide it back without judgment, just notice. Ah, there I go, thinking about tomorrow. And then return your attention to the sound of their voice, the meaning of their words, the connection happening right now. This simple act of noticing and returning is a repetition that builds the muscle of presence. Each time you do it, you are strengthening your ability to stay anchored when the stakes are higher, ensuring that when a real conflict arises, you have the mental discipline to be fully there, ready to disarm the moment with the full power of your attention. Replace but with and to de-escalate and validate simultaneously. This small linguistic shift is a profound cognitive tool that can completely transform the dynamics of a disagreement. Our minds, especially in the heat of conflict, have a natural tendency towards binary either-or thinking. I'm right, you're wrong, your perspective invalidates mine. This mindset turns every discussion into a battlefield where only one side can be victorious. The word but is the primary weapon in this war. When we say, I hear you, but. What we are really communicating is, I have listened just enough to formulate my counter-argument, and now I am going to dismiss your point to make my own. It erases everything that came before it and signals that we are still entrenched in our own position. The conjunction and however operates with a completely different logic. It is a word of integration, not negation. It allows two seemingly contradictory truths to exist in the same space without one having to destroy the other. This practice is deeply aligned with the Stoic pursuit of seeing things as they truly are, in their full, messy, and complex reality. The Stoics aim to perceive the world without the distortion of their passions and prejudices, to understand the nature of a situation from multiple angles. Using and is a practical method for embodying this intellectual honesty in our conversations. When you acknowledge the other person's perspective with an "and," you are not necessarily agreeing with them. You are performing a crucial act of validation. You are saying, "I see that your emotional experience is real and I have my own perspective to add." This does not concede your ground. It simply creates a larger field on which the discussion can take place. For instance, imagine your partner says in frustration, "You never listen to me." The automatic defensive response is often, "That's not true, I do listen. But you're always bringing things up at the worst times." The moment that "but" leaves your lips, you have entered the binary trap. You have implicitly accepted the premise that only one of you can be right, and you have chosen your side. The conversation instantly becomes a debate about the frequency of listening, a battle over historical accuracy that no one can win. Now consider the alternative. You take a breath, manage your own defensive impulse, and respond with, "You feel unheard right now, and I really want to understand what I missed." Feel the seismic shift in energy. The first part of the sentence, "you feel unheard," validates their internal reality. You are not agreeing that you are a bad listener. You are acknowledging the truth of their feeling. This validation is often the very thing the other person is desperately seeking. The second part, connected by "and," introduces your genuine intention to understand. You have moved from adversary to ally. The goal is no longer to prove a point but to solve a shared problem, the disconnect in communication. This approach works because it appeals to a higher truth than who is right. It appeals to the truth of the relationship itself. In any close relationship, whether with a partner, a family member, or a colleague, there are multiple perspectives at play. Your perception of an event is your truth. Their perception, filtered through their own history, insecurities, and desires, is their truth. A Stoic seeks to understand the entire causal chain, not just the link that directly affects them. By using "and," you are essentially saying, "Let's look at this situation together from all sides." This collaborative stance is inherently disarming. The other person's defensive posture begins to soften because they no longer feel they have to fight to be seen or heard. Their anger or frustration, once acknowledged, often loses its sharp edge, creating an opening for genuine dialogue. It transforms a confrontation into an exploration. To integrate this powerful shift into your own communication, take a moment to reflect on a recent disagreement, even a minor one. It could have been about something as simple as what to have for dinner or how to approach a task at work. Now, replay the conversation in your mind and identify a point where you used the word "but." How did the interaction flow after that? Did it bring you closer to resolution or push you further apart? Now, challenge yourself to rephrase your entire response using "and" instead. This isn't about crafting a perfect script for the past. It's a neural exercise to build a new default setting for the future. The next time you feel the urge to say "but," pause for a fraction of a second and see if you can find a way to bridge the gap with "and." This simple linguistic discipline trains your brain to look for common ground instead of battlegrounds, fostering the complex, nuanced understanding that is the hallmark of both wisdom and genuine connection. Humor is a razor-sharp tool used wisely. It can cut the tension without drawing blood. The key to wielding this tool from a Stoic perspective lies in a crucial distinction: the difference between humor that mocks and humor that illuminates. Mocking, sarcastic, or belittling humor is simply another form of aggression. It is designed to inflict a small wound, to score a point at another's expense, and it ultimately pours gasoline on the fire of conflict by adding humiliation to the mix. The Stoic use of humor, however, is rooted in the virtues of wisdom and justice. It is gentle, light-hearted, and its primary target is never the person, but the absurdity of the situation itself. This kind of humor introduces a moment of perspective, like opening a window in a stuffy room. It allows everyone to step back, if only for a second, and see the shared human folly in taking a momentary disagreement so deadly seriously. It demonstrates that you are not so threatened by the conflict that you have lost your ability to see the bigger picture, and that calm confidence is incredibly disarming. While the Stoics are rightly known for their serious pursuit of virtue, they were not grim, joyless figures. Their philosophy was about living in accordance with nature, and human nature includes laughter and connection. The Stoic concern was always with proportionality and intent. Is the humor proportionate to the situation? A life-threatening crisis is not the time for a joke. But a heated debate over quarterly projections, that is precisely the kind of human drama that can benefit from a moment of levity. And what is the intent? Is it to connect and to escalate, or is it to dominate and shame? The Stoic aims for the former, using humor as a social lubricant to restore reason and harmony, not as a weapon to assert superiority. It is a strategic choice to lower the collective temperature, creating the space necessary for a return to productive dialogue. Imagine a project meeting that has gone off the rails. Voices are raised, fingers are being pointed, and personal accusations are starting to fly. The emotional energy is high, and everyone is entrenched in their positions. In this volatile atmosphere, a well-timed, gentle observation can work like a charm. Instead of adding to the noise, you might take a calm breath and say, with a slight smile, "Well, it's clear everyone here cares deeply about getting this right. We might need a bigger room for all this passion." This comment does not make fun of anyone. It doesn't say, "You're all being ridiculous." Instead, it reframes the intense energy in the room as a positive, a shared passion for the project while simultaneously pointing out the slight absurdity of the level of intensity over the issue at hand. It holds up a mirror to the dynamic without blaming anyone reflected in it. This kind of intervention can cause a palpable shift. People might chuckle nervously, some might sigh in recognition, and for a moment the fight or flight response is interrupted. The meeting's focus can then be gently guided back to the problem itself, rather than the personal battles surrounding it. The power of this approach is that it subtly communicates your own inner state. By being the one to introduce a measured moment of lightness, you broadcast that you are not feeling attacked or threatened to the degree that others are. You are operating from a place of security within your inner citadel. This non-verbal message can have a calming effect on everyone else, as emotions are often contagious. Your calm begets more calm. It is a way of leading not by authority, but by example, showing that it is possible to be fully engaged in a discussion without being consumed by it. Of course, this requires careful reading of the room and a genuine delivery. Forced or poorly timed humor can backfire. The goal is never to trivialize the concerns of others, but to contextualize them within the larger, often less dire, scope of reality. Now bring this concept into your own world. Is there a recurring point of tension in your life, perhaps with a particular colleague or within your family, where conversations tend to quickly escalate? It might be a weekly planning session that always devolves into debates, or a sensitive topic that everyone tiptoes around until someone inevitably says the wrong thing. Consider what it might look like to carefully introduce a touch of this Stoic humor, not a joke at someone's expense, but a light-hearted observation about the pattern itself. It could be as simple as, "I think we've found our favorite topic to disagree on again," said with a warm tone. The aim is to acknowledge the friction without adding to it, to create a small crack of lightheartedness through which perspective can enter. This isn't about avoiding the issue, but about changing the emotional climate in which the issue is discussed. making a constructive outcome far more likely. The next time you feel that familiar tension building, pause and ask yourself if this might be the moment to use humor not as a shield, but as a gentle, disarming tool to remind everyone, including yourself, of the shared humanity behind the conflict. The person across from you is made of the same stardust. Their anger is a disturbance in a shared system. This is the heart of the Stoic principle of Sympathea, a profound understanding that the universe is not a collection of isolated, competing parts, but a single, living, interconnected whole. The Stoics saw the cosmos as a vast, rational entity, governed by a divine logos or universal reason. In this view, every person, every creature, every element is an integral thread in a grand cosmic tapestry. To harm another or to meet their disturbance with a disturbance of your own is not just a personal conflict, it is like one part of the body attacking another. It is a dysfunction within a unified system. When you truly internalize this perspective, the entire goal of an interaction shifts. The aim is no longer to defeat an opponent, to win an argument, or to prove your point. The aim becomes to restore harmony to the system, to calm the disturbance because you recognize that their turmoil and your peace are not separate conditions. They are two states within the same interconnected field. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea to ground himself amidst the pressures of empire and the frustrations of dealing with difficult people. He reminded himself that rational beings were created for a common purpose, to work together like pairs of hands or feet. He wrote, "We are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth." To act against one another, then, is contrary to nature. This is a radical reframing of conflict. When someone acts with hostility from a Stoic point of view, they are acting against their own nature. They are a foot that is kicking the other foot, a hand that is slapping its partner. Your response, then, is not to kick back harder, but to seek to understand why the coordination has failed. You respond not as a separate entity under attack, but as a part of the same body seeking to restore its natural, healthy function. This moves disarming from being a clever tactic you employ to a natural expression of your understanding of how the world works. Let's bring this from the cosmic scale down to the pavement. You're in a coffee shop waiting in line, and the person in front of you is berating the barista over a minor mistake in their order. Their tone is harsh, their words are unfair. The easy, automatic reaction is to see a rude individual causing a scene. You might feel a surge of judgmental anger towards them. Now apply the lens of Sympathea. See the three of you, the angry customer, the flustered barista, and you, not as separate islands, but as points in a shared network. The customer's anger is not an isolated event. It is a wave of disturbance rippling through the system. Perhaps they just received terrible news. Maybe they are carrying the weight of a personal tragedy, or are simply exhausted from a life of constant pressure. Their behavior is a symptom of a disconnection from their own rational nature and from the shared humanity of the people around them. Seeing this, your emotional charge changes. The judgmental anger can soften into a more compassionate, systemic concern. You are not excusing their behavior, but you are understanding it as a part of a larger picture. Your desire is no longer for them to be silenced or punished, but for the harmony of the small social system in the coffee shop to be restored. From this place, your response can be radically different. Instead of glaring at the customer or adding to the tension with your own muttered comments, you might project a calm, steady presence. You might even, when there's a pause, offer a small, kind word to the barista like, "It's really busy in here, you're doing a great job." This simple act does not confront the angry customer directly. but it reinforces the shared humanity in the room. It sends a signal that the system is capable of kindness and support, not just conflict. It subtly reminds everyone, including the agitated person, of the interconnected web they are a part of. Your calm becomes a stabilizing force that helps absorb the disturbance and allows it to dissipate more quickly. You have acted not as a warrior defending your territory, but as a healer tending to a momentary illness in the social body. To truly feel the power of this principle, take a quiet moment to bring to mind one specific person you currently struggle with. It could be a demanding boss, a critical in-law, or a neighbor with whom you have a lingering dispute. Now, consciously set aside the story of your conflict for a moment. Instead, visualize the two of you within the vastness of the cosmos. See the planet you both share, the air you both breathe. Recognize the same biological processes that animate your body animate theirs. Acknowledge that you both have known joy and pain, hope and fear. See if you can, even for a few seconds, perceive them not as an adversary in your personal story, but as a fellow participant in the immense, mysterious phenomenon of conscious existence. This exercise is not about suddenly becoming best friends or condoning their actions. It is about expanding your frame of reference. It is about shifting your identity from a solitary self defending its borders to a node in a universal network seeking balance. When you can see the person you struggle with as a part of the same whole that you are a part of, the impulse to disarm their hostility transforms. It stops being a strategy and starts being the most natural response in the world. The instinct of one part of a system to help another part find its way back to health, and in doing so, to heal itself. In Stoicism, the most effective response is often the one that expends the least emotional energy. This principle, the economy of action, is about recognizing that our inner resources, our calm, our focus, our peace are precious and finite. Just as a skilled artisan doesn't waste a single movement, a practiced Stoic learns to communicate with precision, understanding that a torrent of words fueled by anger or fear is not only inefficient but actively destructive. It scatters your energy and hands control of the situation over to your passions. In contrast, a single, well-chosen word or a calm, deliberate gesture is like a surgeon's scalpel, focused, purposeful, and incredibly powerful. This economy isn't about being silent or passive. It's about strategic conservation. It's the difference between trying to put out a fire by frantically flailing at the flames with your bare hands and using a precisely aimed fire extinguisher. One method is chaotic, exhausting, and likely to get you burned. The other is controlled, effective, and resolves the situation with minimal collateral damage. This approach projects an aura of unshakable confidence because it demonstrates that you are not so easily rattled that you need to throw everything you have at every minor provocation. You operate from a place of abundance, not scarcity, because you know your true strength lies in your reserve, not in your expenditure. The Stoics consistently championed purposeful action over passionate reaction. They saw raw emotion as a form of internal chaos that clouded judgment and led to regrettable outcomes. Seneca, in particular, wrote extensively about the wastefulness of anger, describing it as a brief insanity that exhausts the soul. The goal was never to become emotionless, but to ensure that your actions were directed by your rational faculty, your guiding principle, or what the Stoics called your hegemonikon. When your actions are governed by reason, they become efficient. You say what needs to be said, you do what needs to be done, and nothing more. There is no extra drama, no performative outrage, no energy wasted on proving a point that doesn't need proving. This efficiency is itself a form of eloquence. It communicates that you have assessed the situation, understood what is truly important, and are acting accordingly. A lengthy, emotional retort often signals a lack of control, a person who is being pushed by external events. A minimal, calibrated response signals a person who is doing the pushing, who is actively shaping the interaction from a place of inner command. Consider a common scenario. You're in a discussion with a colleague who begins to unfairly criticize a project you've been leading. Their tone is accusatory and their points are exaggerated. The passionate, wasteful reaction would be to interrupt them, to defend every detail, to list all your hard work, to match their tone with your own frustration. This is the equivalent of a verbal firefight. It expends immense emotional energy, puts everyone in the room on edge, and often obscures the one or two valid points that might be buried within the criticism. Now apply the economy of action. Instead of launching a counter-offensive, you simply listen. You allow them to complete their entire thought without interruption. Then you respond not with a paragraph but with a sentence, a calm, simple acknowledgement like, "I see you have significant concerns about the project's direction," followed by a purposeful pause. This does three things with remarkable efficiency. First, it validates their need to be heard without agreeing with their content, which takes the wind out of their sails. Second, it demonstrates your composure and control, instantly elevating your presence in the room. Third, and most importantly, it reframes the interaction. You are no longer in a defensive battle. You have positioned yourself as the calm moderator of a problem-solving session. After that pause, you can then introduce a question that guides the energy productively, such as, "Which specific aspect would you like us to prioritize addressing first?" This entire sequence, a listen, an acknowledgement, a pause, and a question achieves far more than a heated debate ever could, and it does so while conserving your most valuable asset, your equanimity. The power of this economy extends to non-verbal communication as well. A simple, slow nod while someone is venting their frustration can be more disarming than any words. It signals understanding and absorption without endorsement, maintaining soft, steady eye contact, even when being yelled at, projects a fearlessness that can cause the aggressor to second-guess their own behavior. These minimal actions are like judo moves. They use the other person's momentum against them, not through opposition, but through redirection. Their emotional outburst expects and requires a wall to crash against. When you offer no wall, only a calm, open space, their energy has nowhere to go but to dissipate. This is the ultimate efficiency, achieving a peaceful outcome not by fighting, but by skillfully not fighting in the way your opponent expects. To integrate this powerful principle, take a moment for honest self-reflection. Identify one recurring situation in your life where you know you tend to overreact. Maybe it's when your teenager talks back, when another driver cuts you off, or when you receive critical feedback via email. Now, imagine yourself in that situation again, but this time with the conscious intention of practicing the economy of action. What would a more economical response look like? If your pattern is to write a long, defensive email, could the economical response be to wait 1 hour, then reply with a single sentence, "Thank you for this feedback. I will review it carefully and follow up." If your pattern is to shout back in a family argument, could the economical response be to take a deep breath and say, "I need a moment to process that," before leaving the room to regain your composure? The goal is to find the response that requires the least emotional output from you while still moving the situation toward a resolution. This isn't about suppression, it's about selection. It's about choosing the most powerful tool for the job, and often, that tool is not a sledgehammer of emotion, but the quiet, precise leverage of a calm and measured presence. By learning to do less, you ultimately achieve so much more, not just in the situation at hand, but in the preservation of your own inner peace. To disarm your anger, try imagining this conversation is the last one you'll ever have with them. This thought experiment, as jarring as it may feel at first, is a direct application of a powerful Stoic technique known as negative visualization. While we often use this practice to enhance our appreciation for the good things in our lives by contemplating their loss, its power becomes truly transformative when we apply it in the heat of a conflict. In that moment when you feel the heat of indignation rising because a loved one has said something hurtful, your entire focus narrows to the offense. The argument becomes an isolated battlefield, and the person across from you is temporarily cast as an adversary. But what if you could shatter that narrow frame in an instant? Negative visualization does exactly that. It pulls the emergency brake on the runaway train of your anger by forcing a perspective so vast and so final that the petty details of the disagreement simply cannot survive its gravity. The Stoic philosopher Seneca offered what might be the most concise and practical advice for living a good life when he wrote that we should rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck. He wasn't encouraging morbid anxiety. He was prescribing a vaccine against taking our present circumstances for granted. He advised us to enjoy our friendships, our health, our possessions as if we might lose them at any moment. The logical extension of this, when applied to a personal conflict, is breathtakingly simple. That person you are arguing with is not a permanent fixture. The opportunity to reconcile, to understand, to share a laugh tomorrow is not a guarantee. It is a fragile, fleeting possibility. By consciously imagining the void their absence would create, you perform an immediate alchemy on your own emotions. The anger, which felt so solid and justified moments before, begins to feel flimsy and insignificant when held up against the stark reality of permanent loss. Imagine a specific, all-too-common scenario. You're in a heated argument with your partner. The topic might be something trivial, like who forgot to do a household chore, or something more significant, like finances. The words are flying, and each of you is digging in, building a case against the other. The connection between you feels strained, even broken in that moment. Now, in the space of a single breath, you invoke negative visualization. You picture your home after they are gone, not just gone from the room, but gone from your life. You visualize the crushing silence, the empty space at the dinner table, the profound loneliness that would follow the permanent loss of this person you have built a life with. You allow yourself to truly feel for just 3 seconds what that reality would be like. This is not about dramatic despair, it is about a sobering dose of truth. When you return your attention to the present argument, something fundamental has shifted. The forgotten chore or the misspent $50 hasn't changed, but its importance has been utterly recalibrated. It is now measured against the immeasurable value of the person standing in front of you. Your desire to be right is replaced by a deeper, more primal desire to connect. This practice works because it bypasses the intellectual arguments and speaks directly to the heart. You can tell yourself all day long that you shouldn't be angry, that it's a small thing, but that logic often fails to penetrate the emotional storm. Negative visualization doesn't argue with the anger. It simply overwhelms it with a more powerful emotion: grief preemptively felt. This anticipated grief is a clarifying force. It strips away the ego's investment in winning the point and reveals what you are truly fighting for, which is not victory in an argument, but the preservation of a bond. Your entire approach softens, your tone may change. You might find yourself listening more intently to what they are actually saying beneath their own anger, hearing the fear or the hurt that is driving it. The argument begins to transform from a battle into a desperate, clumsy, and entirely human attempt by two people to bridge a gap. You become willing to yield a small point because you have suddenly remembered that the relationship itself is the main point. The next time you feel that familiar sting of being slighted by someone you genuinely care about, whether it's a partner, a parent, a child, or a dear friend, challenge yourself to pause and employ this drastic but profoundly effective tool. Before you formulate your cutting retort or your defensive explanation, close your eyes for just a moment. Picture your world without them in it. See the future events they will miss. Hear the silence where their voice should be. Feel the hollow space their absence would leave in your life. Then open your eyes and look at them again. See if the words you were about to speak still feel necessary, or if a different, more connecting response now seems not just possible but essential. This practice does not ask you to ignore your feelings or tolerate genuine mistreatment. It simply ensures that your actions are guided by what you value most, not by the temporary turbulence of a passing conflict. It is the ultimate reminder that we often fail to appreciate the depth of our connections until we are faced with the prospect of their loss, and that by choosing to face that prospect voluntarily, we can save ourselves from the regret of having squandered precious time on anger. Sometimes the way to win an argument is to let the other person win a point first. This sounds counterintuitive, like a surrender before the battle has even begun. But in the Stoic art of emotional disarming, it is one of the most sophisticated and effective moves you can make. Think of it as a form of conversational judo. In judo, you don't meet your opponent's force head-on. You use their own momentum and weight against them, redirecting their energy to achieve your goal. When you strategically concede a minor point, you are doing precisely that. You are not admitting defeat on the core issue. Instead, you are gracefully stepping aside from their initial thrust of aggression, allowing it to pass by harmlessly, and in doing so, you unbalance them and create an opening for genuine dialogue. This is not an act of weakness. It is a display of immense strategic strength and emotional intelligence, rooted in the profound Stoic wisdom of knowing what is truly worth fighting for. The power of this approach lies in a fundamental human need that often fuels conflicts more than the actual topic itself: the need to feel heard and understood. When someone enters a debate, especially an emotionally charged one, their posture is often defensive. They have built a wall around their position, expecting an attack. Their primary goal, whether they admit it or not, is often less about discovering truth and more about defending their ego and their perspective from being invalidated. If you immediately challenge their entire position, you are essentially confirming their fears and strengthening their resolve to defend that wall. But when you identify a small, non-essential part of their argument that you can honestly agree with and you concede it willingly, you do something remarkable. You send a signal that you are not an enemy intent on total destruction. You demonstrate that you are listening, that you are fair, and that you are capable of recognizing truth wherever it appears. This single act begins to dismantle their defensive posture brick by brick. It validates their need to be heard, which is a powerful form of psychological oxygen. Once that need is met, their fight-or-flight response begins to subside, and they become more capable of listening in return. You have built a sliver of trust, and trust is the foundation upon which any real agreement can be built. This practice is deeply aligned with the Stoic discipline of distinguishing between what is truly important and what is merely an indifferent. The Stoics held that the only true good is virtue acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Everything else, our possessions, our reputations, even our specific opinions on most matters, falls into the category of indifference. They are not inherently good or bad. Their value depends on how we use them in the pursuit of virtue. In the heat of an argument, our ego latches onto our opinions as if they were matters of life and death. We treat being right about a trivial fact or a minor point of interpretation as if it were a test of our very character. The Stoic, however, constantly asks, is this point essential to the core of virtue? Is defending this specific detail necessary for acting justly or wisely? If the answer is no, then conceding it is not a loss. It is a strategic release of something that was never truly important to begin with. It is a conscious choice to conserve your energy and focus for the battles that truly matter, the ones that involve your fundamental principles. By yielding on a triviality, you free yourself to stand firm on a matter of substance. Imagine a practical scenario in a workplace debate about a new marketing strategy. Your colleague is passionately arguing for an approach you believe is flawed. They begin by stating, "Our biggest competitor saw a 20% increase in engagement after they started using more video content, so we must do the same." Now, you might know that the competitor's success was due to a variety of factors, not just video, and you disagree with the conclusion. The unskillful, ego-driven response is to immediately challenge the entire premise. That's not a fair comparison. Their audience is completely different, and they also launched a new product at the same time. Video had nothing to do with it. This response, while it may be factually correct, is experienced as a total rejection. It puts your colleague on the defensive and turns the discussion into a battle over the accuracy of a single data point. Now, apply the art of the concession. You pause and instead respond, "You're absolutely right that they saw a significant boost with their video campaign. That's a great example of the power of visual content." You have just conceded a small, factual point. You have agreed with their observation, validating that they have done their research and that their point has merit. This is the judo move. Then you can pivot to the larger issue. Given that success, the real question for us becomes how to adapt that principle to our unique brand identity and customer base. I'm concerned that if we simply copy their approach without considering our distinct voice, we might not see the same results. What if we explore how to use video in a way that is unmistakably us? Do you see the dramatic shift? The conversation is no longer a binary argument about whether the competitor's example is valid. It has been elevated to a collaborative discussion about how to best apply a principle. By conceding the small point, you have disarmed your colleague's defensiveness and invited them into a partnership to solve a larger, more meaningful problem. You have not sacrificed your position, you have advanced it by choosing a more effective path. To weave this skill into the fabric of your own interactions, take a moment to look back at a recent disagreement you experienced. It could have been with a partner about weekend plans, a discussion with a friend about a movie, or a professional meeting. Replay the exchange in your mind. Was there a minor point they made, perhaps a subjective preference, a small piece of data, or a tangential observation that you immediately felt compelled to challenge? What was the result of that challenge? Did it help the conversation move forward, or did it create a stumbling block? Now, imagine an alternative path. What if you had consciously chosen to concede that small point? What if you had said, "You know, you're right about that detail," or "I can see your perspective on that aspect"? How might that have changed the emotional temperature of the discussion? Would it have created an opening for you to then guide the conversation toward the more significant issue you cared about? This reflection isn't about regret, it's about preparation. By identifying these opportunities in hindsight, you train your mind to spot them in the moment, empowering you to choose connection over conflict and strategic wisdom over reflexive opposition. You can't disarm someone else until you know how to disarm the explosive within yourself. This is the profound, non-negotiable starting point for all the techniques we've discussed. The Stoic Pause, the reframing of perception, the strategic use of silence, all of these powerful tools are useless if you are a stranger to your own internal landscape. Before you can ever hope to manage an external conflict, you must first become the master of the internal one, and that begins with a deep, honest, and ongoing practice of self-examination. The ancient Stoics were relentless in this pursuit, viewing self-knowledge not as a luxury, but as the very foundation of a virtuous life. They wholeheartedly embraced the Delphic maxim, "Know thyself," carving it into the core of their philosophy. For them, this wasn't about narcissistic navel-gazing. It was a practical, urgent necessity for navigating a chaotic world with wisdom and tranquility. To know yourself is to know your vulnerabilities, your soft spots, the precise psychological buttons that, when pressed, cause you to abandon reason and revert to a reactive, primal state. This process of self-discovery is like drawing a map of your own emotional minefield. You cannot hope to walk through a field of explosives safely if you have no idea where they are buried. Your triggers are those hidden mines. They are the specific words, the particular tones of voice, the familiar situations that bypass your conscious, rational mind and plunge you directly into a storm of emotion. For one person, it might be the feeling of being unfairly criticized, a throwback to a childhood filled with conditional approval. For another, it could be the sensation of being ignored or dismissed, tapping into a deep-seated fear of insignificance. Perhaps it's a certain type of authority figure or a specific phrase that a loved one uses, or even the chaos of a crowded, noisy environment. These triggers are highly personal and often irrational, but their power is absolute if they remain unexamined. The goal of Stoic self-examination is to bring them out of the shadows and into the light of your conscious awareness. Once you can name them, you can see them coming. Once you can see them coming, you are no longer their helpless victim. You become the observer who can choose a different path. The most practical way to begin this mapping process is to keep a simple log, either mentally or in a journal. This isn't about writing long, dramatic entries. It's about becoming a detective of your own emotions. For 1 week, make a commitment to notice. Every time you feel that familiar surge of anger, anxiety, or defensiveness, pause for just 30 seconds later to ask 3 questions. First, what was the immediate catalyst? Was it a specific word someone used, the tone in their voice, a particular situation? Be as precise as possible. Second, what was the story you instantly told yourself? This is the judgment you assign to the event. For example, if a colleague didn't reply to your email, the story might be, "They are deliberately ignoring me to show disrespect." Third, how did your body feel? Did your chest tighten? Did your face get hot? Did your jaw clench? This physical awareness is a crucial early warning system. By consistently logging these 3 data points, patterns will begin to emerge with startling clarity. You will discover that you don't get angry at a wide, unpredictable range of things, but at a specific, repeatable set of conditions. You are not randomly volatile, you are predictably triggered, and what is predictable can be managed. Consider a real-world application. Imagine you've noticed through your log that you have an intense trigger around feeling micromanaged. Every time your manager asks for a detailed progress update, you feel a hot wave of resentment and interpret it as a lack of trust in your competence. This trigger has led to snapped replies, sullen silences, and a deteriorating relationship. Now, armed with this self-knowledge, you can change the entire dynamic. The next time your manager asks for an update, you'll feel the familiar prick of the trigger, but instead of that sensation being a signal to react, it now serves as a signal to pause. You can recognize it for what it is, an old wound being touched, a familiar story starting to play. This moment of recognition is the disarming of the internal explosive. It creates the space for you to choose a different interpretation. Perhaps your manager is under pressure from their own boss and is just ensuring everything is on track. Perhaps it's simply their standard operating procedure with no hidden judgment attached. From this place of awareness, you can respond not with defensiveness, but with calm professionalism. You have effectively neutered the trigger by understanding its origin and refusing to accept its initial catastrophic narrative. This is the ultimate empowerment. The external world will always contain people and events that have the potential to provoke you. You cannot control that, but you can achieve absolute sovereignty over your internal world by knowing exactly what provokes you and why. This self-knowledge turns you from a puppet into a puppeteer. You are no longer jerked around by invisible strings. You hold the strings yourself, able to choose which ones to pull and which ones to let lie still. So let's make this personal and immediate. I want you to pause this video for a moment right now. Grab a pen or just open a note on your phone. Your challenge is to identify your top 3 emotional triggers. What are the 3 things that, with near certainty, will cause you to lose your cool or retreat into anxiety? Be brutally honest with yourself. Is it being told what to do? Is it feeling excluded from a group? Is it having your intelligence questioned? Once you have them, take it one step further. For each trigger, ask yourself the most important question: why? Why does this particular thing have such power over me? What old story, what hidden insecurity, what past experience does it connect to? This act of naming and questioning is not an admission of weakness. It is the first and most courageous step toward building an inner citadel so strong that no external trigger can ever breach its walls. Are you trying to win the round, or are you playing a longer game? This question gets to the heart of a powerful distinction that can reframe every single conflict you face. The concept comes from the idea that some games are finite, with fixed rules, known players, and a clear objective to win. A football match, a chess game, a courtroom trial, these are finite games. The goal is to defeat the other side within the agreed-upon boundaries. But there is another kind of game, an infinite game. The purpose of an infinite game is not to win, but to keep the game going. The rules can change, the players come and go, and the ultimate goal is the continued play itself. When you apply this lens to your daily life, you start to see that so many of our conflicts are finite games we mistakenly believe we need to win. We treat an argument with a loved one like a courtroom battle, marshalling evidence, cross-examining their statements, and aiming for a verdict in our favor. Stoicism, with its unwavering focus on the long-term cultivation of a flourishing life, teaches us to shift our entire perspective from the finite game to the infinite one. The ultimate Stoic goal, eudaimonia, is not a trophy you win on a Tuesday afternoon after a successful argument. It is a state of being you cultivate over a lifetime, a continuous journey of living in accordance with virtue and nature. Every interaction is a move in this infinite game. When you choose to emotionally disarm someone, you are making a strategic decision for the infinite game. You are sacrificing the temporary, ego-boosting satisfaction of winning a finite argument in order to preserve or strengthen the long-term integrity of a relationship and, most importantly, your own character. Winning a shouting match might give you a fleeting sense of victory, but if it damages the trust and respect between you and the other person, you have actually made a terrible move in the infinite game. You have jeopardized the future play for a momentary point. The Stoic is always asking, what action right now will best serve my long-term goal of living a virtuous, peaceful, and flourishing life? The answer is almost never prove I'm right at all costs. It is far more likely to be respond in a way that maintains harmony and demonstrates my commitment to wisdom and justice, even if it means letting a minor point slide. This is not losing, this is playing the long game. Your integrity and your peace are the assets you are protecting, and they are infinitely more valuable than the temporary trophy of being right in a single, fleeting encounter. Consider the classic, emotionally charged dynamic of a parent and a teenager arguing over a curfew. The finite game is clear. The parent states a time. The teenager argues for a later time. The parent presents reasons: safety, responsibility, need for sleep. The teenager counters with reasons: everyone else gets to stay out, it's a special occasion, they'll be fine. This can quickly escalate into a finite battle of wills. The parent's goal becomes to enforce the rule and win the argument, establishing their authority. The teenager's goal becomes to gain more freedom and win the argument, establishing their independence. If the parent wins by imposing their will through punishment or ultimatums, they may secure compliance for that single night. But in the infinite game of building a lifelong, trusting relationship with their child, they may have suffered a significant loss. The teenager feels unheard, controlled, and resentful, which will likely manifest in other ways, creating more finite battles down the road. Now imagine the parent shifting to an infinite game mindset. The goal is no longer to win the curfew argument. The goal is to guide a young person toward becoming a responsible, trustworthy adult while maintaining a strong, open connection. With this goal in mind, the parent's approach changes entirely. They might use the Stoic Pause, truly listening to the teenager's reasoning without immediately shutting it down. They might employ empathetic inquiry. Help me understand why this later time is so important to you. They might look for a way to make a move that serves the infinite game, perhaps by saying, "I hear that this event is a big deal for you. Your safety is my non-negotiable priority. What if we agree on this later time as a trial, with the condition that you text me when you're heading home and that we see how it goes for future occasions?" This response does not simply cave in. It engages the teenager as a participant in the rule-making process. It trades the finite victory of total control for the infinite victory of building trust, teaching negotiation, and demonstrating respect. The parent has disarmed the conflict not by surrendering, but by elevating the discussion from a petty power struggle to a collaborative step in the child's development. The game of parenting continues, and the relationship is strengthened for the next challenge. This principle applies to every arena of life. A business partnership is an infinite game. Winning a fierce argument over a minor budget line item is a finite victory that can poison the collaborative spirit needed for the company's long-term success. A marriage is the ultimate infinite game. Proving you were right about whose turn it was to take out the trash is a hollow victory if it creates a residue of bitterness that erodes intimacy over time. The Stoic focus on eudaimonia reminds us that our daily actions are not isolated events. They are threads woven into the tapestry of our entire life. A single thread of anger or spite might seem insignificant, but when woven repeatedly, it creates a pattern of conflict and isolation. A single thread of patience and understanding, chosen even when it was difficult, contributes to a pattern of peace and connection. So bring this lens to a situation in your own life right now. Think of a current, lingering conflict, whether it's with a colleague, a family member, or a friend. Now ask yourself this crucial question: am I playing a finite game or an infinite game? Are my actions in this conflict focused on winning this specific round, on proving my point, on making sure the other person admits they were wrong? Or are my actions focused on preserving the long-term health of this relationship and my own peace of mind? The answer will instantly clarify your next move. If you realize you've been stuck in a finite game, you now have the power to change the rules. You can choose to make a move that serves the infinite game instead. That might mean being the first to apologize, not because you were entirely wrong, but because the relationship is more important than the score. It might mean letting a comment go unanswered, not because you agree with it, but because you refuse to invest your energy in a battle that doesn't serve your long-term flourishing. Recognizing the game you are in is the first step toward playing it wisely, and Stoicism provides the ultimate playbook for the only game that truly matters, the infinite game of living a good life. Remembering that you will die is the ultimate tool for silencing pointless noise. This is the heart of the Stoic practice known as memento mori, a Latin phrase that translates to remember you must die. At first glance, it might sound morbid or depressing, a dark thought to be avoided. But for the Stoics, it was the exact opposite. It was a vitalizing, clarifying, and profoundly liberating meditation. They saw the conscious awareness of our own mortality not as a threat, but as the most powerful lens through which to view our daily lives. When you hold the fact of your inevitable death clearly in your mind, the vast majority of the things that normally upset us are instantly returned to their proper, tiny size. The rude comment, the traffic jam, the professional slight, the argument over whose turn it is to take out the trash. These things do not disappear, but they lose their emotional gravity, their power to hook us and drag us into a storm of negative emotion. The meditation on death is the ultimate perspective tool because it forces a simple, urgent question. Is this momentary conflict, this petty grievance, truly worth the precious and irreplaceable time of my one and only life? Marcus Aurelius offered perhaps the most direct instruction for this practice when he wrote in his private journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Read that sentence slowly. You could leave life right now. This is not a distant, abstract concept about growing old. It is an immediate and startling truth about the fragility of our existence. Aurelius is telling us to use this truth as a guiding principle for every single moment. If you truly internalize that this conversation, this hour, this day could be your last, how would it change your priorities? The desire to win an argument, to prove a point, to get the last word in, would likely vanish, replaced by a desire for connection, for understanding, for peace. The energy you would have wasted on indignation is suddenly freed up for what truly matters, expressing love, pursuing virtue, appreciating beauty, and simply being present. Anger, in this light, is exposed as what it truly is, a tragic waste of the limited seconds we have been given. Let's apply this to a modern source of endless frustration, the nasty online comment. You post a thoughtful idea or a piece of creative work, and someone replies with a cruel, dismissive, or ad hominem attack. The immediate, visceral reaction is often a hot surge of defensiveness. Your heart rate quickens, your fingers itch to type a scorching reply that puts this person in their place. The entire world seems to shrink to this single, infuriating interaction on a screen. Now activate memento mori. Before your fingers touch the keyboard, you pause. You close your eyes for just 3 seconds and consciously remember, I am going to die. The person who wrote this comment is also going to die. In 100 years, likely less, both of you will be gone, and this entire exchange will be dust, utterly forgotten. From this vantage point, does crafting the perfect, cutting retort still feel important? Does winning this microscopic battle in a forgotten corner of the internet seem like a worthy use of the one and only life you have? The likely answer is a resounding no. The urge to engage dissipates not because you are weak, but because you have become wise. You see the exchange for what it is, a meaningless blip, a piece of digital static that is entirely unworthy of your finite attention and emotional energy. You can simply close the tab and redirect your focus to something that genuinely adds value to your brief, beautiful time here. This practice is not about becoming passive or disengaged from life. It is about becoming selectively engaged, investing your spirit only in what is truly worthy of it. It helps you distinguish between the things that are matters of genuine principle, which are worth standing for with courage, and the things that are merely matters of ego, which are worth letting go of with grace. The meditation on death does not tell you to avoid all conflict. It gives you the clarity to choose your battles with supreme discrimination. A threat to your core values or the well-being of a loved one remains significant, even in the face of mortality. But a threat to your pride, to your desire to be seen as right, that is revealed as the illusion it truly is. Your pride will die with you. Your character is what endures in the memory of those you leave behind. Memento mori is the tool that ensures you are building a legacy of character, not a resume of one arguments. To feel the immediate power of this concept, I want you to try a brief experiment right now. Bring to mind a current minor irritation. It could be that lingering annoyance with a coworker who always interrupts you, the frustration of a household appliance breaking down, or the resentment you feel towards someone who slighted you at a social gathering. Hold that irritation in your mind and feel its weight. Now close your eyes, take one deep breath, and as you exhale, imagine that this breath is one of the last few thousand you have left. Visualize your life not as an endless stretch of time, but as a single day, and acknowledge that you have no way of knowing what hour it is. See the faces of the people you love most. Then open your eyes and look at that irritation again. How does it seem now? Has its sharp edge dulled? Does the need to hold onto the grievance feel as urgent? For most people, this simple shift in perspective causes the problem to shrink dramatically. It doesn't make the practical issue disappear, but it drains the emotional poison out of it. You are left with a simple, manageable situation to be handled with practicality, not a cosmic injustice that demands a dramatic response. This is the daily gift of memento mori. It is the great clarifier, the ultimate tool for silencing the noise so you can finally hear the music of your own life. The ultimate test of character is to give someone fairness when they are giving you none. This is where Stoic philosophy moves from a set of helpful techniques to a profound and demanding way of life, centered on the cardinal virtue of justice. It's easy to be fair, kind, and reasonable when you are treated with fairness and respect in return. That's merely a transaction. The Stoic conception of justice, however, is not a transaction. It is a principle you live by for its own sake, a commitment to act with integrity regardless of how the world acts upon you. When someone treats you unjustly with malice, deception, or aggression, the natural human impulse is to mirror their behavior. To retaliate, to give them a taste of their own medicine, to ensure they understand the pain they've caused. But this path, while satisfying in the most primal sense, has a devastating cost. It requires you to abandon your own virtue at the very moment it is most needed. You become a reflection of the injustice you claim to oppose. The Stoic asks a more challenging question. What does it mean to be just in an unjust situation? The answer lies in a radical understanding of what justice truly is. It is not about achieving a fair outcome in a cosmic sense, where every wrong is righted and every villain gets their due. The Stoics were pragmatic. They knew the world often does not work that way. Instead, justice is an internal state. It is the quality of your own character, your unwavering commitment to doing what is right because it is right, not because you expect a reward or a specific reaction. The philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his task was not to ensure others acted virtuously, but to ensure that he himself did. The reward for acting justly, therefore, is not the reform of the other person, though that can sometimes be a welcome side effect. The primary reward is that you get to remain the kind of person you aspire to be. You reinforce the walls of your inner citadel. When you respond to unfairness with fairness, you perform a powerful act of self-confirmation. You declare that your values are not for sale, that they cannot be hijacked by the bad behavior of others. Your character remains intact and, in fact, grows stronger through the test. This approach is profoundly disarming because it operates on a level the unjust person does not understand and cannot easily counter. Aggression and unfairness expect a similar energy to sustain themselves. They are a form of emotional fire that requires the fuel of your outrage, your defensiveness, your own injustice to keep burning. When you respond instead with calm, principled fairness, you are essentially refusing to provide that fuel. You are dousing the flames with a substance they cannot combust. Imagine a neighbor who has been spreading malicious rumors about you. The gossip reaches your ears and the sting of betrayal is sharp. The unjust path is clear. You could start your own counter-rumors. You could confront them publicly to humiliate them. You could ostracize them completely. But each of these actions, while feeling justified, would only escalate the conflict and pollute your own character with the very pettiness you despise. Now consider the Stoic path of justice. You do not ignore the behavior, for justice also requires upholding your own dignity. You might choose to have a calm, private conversation, stating the facts without hysterical accusation. I've heard that you've been saying X about me. That is not true and it's damaging. I want to understand why you would say that. This in itself is a just act. It seeks truth and offers a chance for resolution. But the true test comes later. Suppose a few weeks after this incident, you see that same neighbor struggling to get a heavy piece of furniture into their home. The easy, passive-aggressive response is to look the other way, to feel a sense of schadenfreude at their difficulty. The just response, however, is to see a human being in need. Acting justly would mean walking over and offering to help. This is not about being a pushover or condoning their past actions. It is about demonstrating through your actions that your commitment to decency is unconditional. You are helping them not for their sake, but for your own, because you are a person who helps others. The impact of this can be seismic. It confronts their perception of you as an enemy, and more importantly, it exposes the smallness of their own actions in the stark light of your magnanimity. They may be shamed into reflection, or they may simply remain bitter. The outcome is not the point. The point is that you have acted in accordance with your nature, and in doing so, you have reclaimed all the power in the dynamic. To embody this principle is to understand that justice is a gift you give yourself. It is the ultimate declaration of independence from the chaos of externals. Your sense of worth and your moral compass are no longer tied to how others treat you. They are rooted in the unshakable ground of your own chosen virtues. This is perhaps the most challenging and most liberating lesson Stoicism has to offer. It asks you to find victory not in the defeat of an opponent, but in the unwavering consistency of your own character. So bring this into the light of your own experience. Bring to mind someone who has been unjust to you, whether in a small or significant way. Now set aside the story of what they did and the desire for them to be held accountable. Instead, ask yourself this single, powerful question. What would it mean in this specific situation to act with strict justice towards them? Not with weakness, not with surrender, but with a firm, principled fairness that aligns with your highest ideals. It might mean listening to their side without interruption, even if you disagree. It might mean acknowledging a grain of truth in their criticism, even if it was delivered cruelly. It might mean refusing to speak poorly of them to others. or it might mean offering a simple courtesy when none is expected. The action itself is less important than the intention behind it, the intention to preserve your own integrity above all else. In that conscious choice, you will find a strength that no unfairness can ever take away. Your body broadcasts a signal before you even speak. Learn to control the broadcast. We often think of communication as a process that starts with words, but the truth is, your physical presence is communicating volumes long before you open your mouth. This isn't just about what others see, it's about a powerful feedback loop between your body and your mind. Modern science confirms what the Stoics intuitively understood. The state of your body directly influences the state of your mind. When you feel anxious or threatened, your body instinctively reacts. Your shoulders tense up toward your ears, your breath becomes shallow and rapid, your fists might clench, and your gaze can become hard or darting. These are ancient, primal signals of a body preparing for a fight or a flight. But here's the crucial Stoic insight: you can run this process in reverse. By consciously choosing to adopt the physiology of calm, you can actually send a message of safety and stability to your own brain, generating the inner tranquility you wish to project outwardly. This isn't about faking it until you make it. It's about using your body as a direct tool to cultivate the very apatheia we discussed earlier. The Stoics, while primarily focused on the mastery of the mind, certainly did not ignore the vessel that carries it. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and understood physical hardship intimately, spoke of the body as an instrument for the soul. He taught that we should care for this instrument, not for vanity, but so that it does not hinder our pursuit of virtue. A body racked with tension, breathless with anxiety, is an instrument out of tune. It creates static that interferes with the clear signal of your reasoned judgment. Preparing the body, therefore, is an essential part of preparing the mind for any challenge. When you manage your physical presence, you are not just putting on a show for others. You are actively tuning your instrument, ensuring that when the time comes to plague, to respond to a provocation, the notes that come out are clear, measured, and harmonious, rather than a jarring cacophony of reactive emotion. Think about the non-verbal messages we send. A person standing with clenched fists and a rigid posture is broadcasting defiance and readiness for conflict. They are a closed system. Conversely, someone with relaxed shoulders, open palms, and a steady, deep breath is broadcasting control and openness. They are non-threatening yet immovably present. This is where the disarming power lies. When you are confronted by someone who is emotionally charged, they are subconsciously scanning you for signs of threat or weakness. If they see your body mirroring their own agitation, if they see you becoming tense and closed off, it confirms their narrative of conflict. You have become a worthy opponent in their battle. But if they see your body remaining calm and open, it disrupts their entire script. Their aggression is met with a quiet, physical stability that refuses to participate in the escalating drama. Your calm demeanor acts as a heat sink, absorbing the chaotic energy of the situation and dissipating it without a reaction. Let's make this intensely practical. Before you walk into any potentially difficult conversation, a performance review, a tough talk with your partner, a negotiation, take 60 seconds to practice what you might call a Stoic posture. Find a quiet space, even if it's just a bathroom stall. First, plant your feet firmly on the ground, about hip-width apart. Feel the solid connection to the floor, as if you are a tree sending roots deep into the earth. This grounding stance prevents the light, unsteady feeling of anxiety. Next, bring your attention to your breath. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Focus on making the exhale longer than the inhale, which actively triggers the body's parasympathetic nervous system, telling your brain that the danger has passed. Then roll your shoulders back and down, away from your ears. Imagine you are making space for your heart to breathe. Unclench your jaw and let your hands hang loosely by your sides. Finally, bring a soft, almost gentle expression to your eyes, even if you're just looking at a wall. This isn't a stare, it's a calm, observant gaze. This 60-second ritual is not a magic trick. It is a deliberate, physical preparation that aligns your body with the reasoned, calm state you want to embody. You are programming your nervous system for peace. Now, bring this awareness into a real-time interaction. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague directly challenges an idea you've just presented. You feel the initial flash of heat, the urge to defend yourself. This is the critical moment. Instead of letting that emotion dictate your posture, you consciously intervene. Under the table where no one can see, you press your feet more firmly into the floor. You take one discreet but full breath. You relax your shoulders, which have started to creep upward. And you maintain soft eye contact with the person speaking, neither glaring nor looking away in submission. These tiny, physical adjustments will have an immediate effect on your internal state. They create a momentary buffer, a space between the provocation and your response. From this physically anchored place, you are far more likely to respond with a calm, "I appreciate that perspective." Can you elaborate on your concerns? Then with a defensive outburst, your body has become your first and most reliable line of defense, not by fighting, but by embodying stillness. To truly integrate this power, you need to become a student of your own physical habits. Sometime in the next 24 hours, I want you to conduct a simple experiment. The next time you feel a wave of stress, whether you're stuck in traffic, dealing with a frustrating email, or having a minor disagreement, freeze for just a second and observe your body. Don't try to change anything yet, just notice, where is the tension residing? Is it in your clenched jaw, your tightened gut, your furrowed brow? Are you holding your breath? This act of observation is the first step toward mastery. Once you've identified one key area of tension, make a conscious choice to adjust it. If your jaw is tight, gently separate your teeth and let your lips part slightly. If your shoulders are hunched, slowly roll them back. If you're breathless, take one deep, intentional breath. This isn't about solving the external problem in that moment. It's about solving the internal one. You are demonstrating to yourself that you have agency over your own physical state, and by extension, over your emotional landscape. Each time you do this, you strengthen the neural pathway that links conscious physical control to emotional equilibrium, turning your body from a passive reactor into an active tool for cultivating the unshakable calm that disarms everyone around you. The day's battles are over. Now comes the time to learn from them. This is the essence of the Stoic practice known as the evening review. A deliberate and gentle debrief of your day that transforms every single interaction, especially the difficult ones, into a training session for your character. Imagine a blacksmith not hammering the sword while it is red hot in the midst of battle, but later, in the quiet of the workshop, examining the blade for nicks, assessing its temper, and planning how to forge an even stronger weapon for the next challenge. The evening review is precisely that workshop for your mind. It is the space where you step out of the heat of the moment and into the cool light of reason, where you can analyze your actions not with self-condemnation, but with the calm curiosity of a scientist studying data. The goal is not to berate yourself for your failures, but to systematically and compassionately identify where you drifted from your principles so that you can course correct for tomorrow. This practice was a non-negotiable part of the daily routine for serious Stoics like Seneca. In his letters, he describes his own nightly ritual with beautiful clarity. He would retreat to a quiet space, and in the stillness he would pose 3 simple but profound questions to his soul. He would ask, what bad habit have you cured today? What fault have you resisted? In what respect are you better? This was not an exercise in vanity. It was an act of accountability. He was holding a mirror up to his own character, not to admire his reflection, but to spot any smudges of vice or error. He wrote, I make use of this power, and every day I plead my cause before myself. When the light has been removed from sight, and my wife, long aware of my habit, has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by. This commitment to ruthless self-honesty, performed with a spirit of improvement rather than punishment, is what turns random life experiences into a curated curriculum for wisdom. To make this ancient practice feel immediately accessible, let's break it down into a simple, modern format you can start tonight. The review doesn't need to be an hour-long meditation. It can be a focused 2-minute mental exercise. Begin by selecting just one significant social interaction from your day. It could be the argument with your partner, the tense meeting with your boss, or even a brief but frustrating exchange with a stranger. Now, with that single event as your case study, ask yourself a sequence of gentle, investigative questions. First, ask about your perceptions. When the conflict began, what was my initial judgment? Did I immediately assume malice, or was I able to see the person behind the provocation? This connects directly to the discipline of perception we discussed earlier. Next, inquire about your reactions. Did I use the Stoic Pause, or was I swept away by my first impulse? When I spoke, were my words chosen from a place of calm principle, or were they a reactive outburst designed to wound? Then delve deeper into the specifics of your response. Could I have used the art of the parry, responding with a calm, curious question instead of a defensive statement? Did I maintain the shield of a calm physical demeanor, or did my body betray my inner turmoil with tense shoulders and a sharp tone? Finally, and most importantly, ask the forward-looking question. Based on this analysis, what is one small thing I can do differently tomorrow? The answer isn't a vague resolution to be better. It is a specific tactical adjustment. It might be, tomorrow, if I feel criticized, I will practice taking one full breath before I speak. Or next time we discuss that topic, I will try to rephrase my point using and instead of but. This turns the review from a passive assessment into an active training plan. You are identifying the exact muscle that needs strengthening and designing a repetition for it. The immense power of this practice is that it builds mastery through consistent, incremental reflection. You wouldn't expect to become a master pianist by simply playing songs over and over without ever stopping to correct your fingering. True skill comes from practice, yes, but also from mindful review. The evening review is that essential period of correction. It ensures that you are not just repeating your mistakes day after day, but are instead learning from them, refining your technique, and gradually embodying the principles of Stoic disarming until they become your default setting. Each reviewed day is another brick laid in the foundation of your inner citadel, making it stronger and more resilient for all the days to come. So tonight, before you sleep, I encourage you to try this for yourself. It requires no special tools, just a few moments of quiet attention. Think back over your day and pinpoint one interaction that had an emotional charge, whether positive or negative. Replay it in your mind like a short film. Then, gently and without judgment, ask yourself Seneca's questions tailored to this event. What did I handle well? Perhaps you managed to hold your tongue when you wanted to lash out. Where did I miss an opportunity to apply a Stoic principle? Maybe you succumbed to the urge to have the last word. And finally, how can I improve? Your answer is your homework for tomorrow. This simple act of nightly reflection is perhaps the most practical tool of all, because it guarantees that no day, no matter how challenging, is ever wasted. Every encounter becomes your teacher, and every evening your classroom. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the single thread that weaves through every technique and every principle we've explored. True emotional disarming is not a collection of clever tricks to be used on other people. It is, first and always, an internal practice of profound self-mastery. Every tool we've discussed, from the foundational Stoic pause to the cosmic perspective of the view from above, has one ultimate purpose: to fortify you. To build an inner resilience so robust that the chaos of the outside world simply cannot knock you off your center. This journey began with the realization that our power lies not in controlling external events, but in mastering our judgments about them. We learn to create that crucial space between stimulus and response, to reframe our perception of provocation, and to retreat into the unassailable peace of our inner citadel. We explored practices from strategic silence and empathetic inquiry to the loving acceptance of our fate, all designed not to manipulate others, but to liberate ourselves from the tyranny of our own reactive passions. This power you've been cultivating does not stem from a desire to control anyone else. It flows from an unwavering, personal commitment to living virtuously. It is the courage to act with justice even when treated unjustly, the wisdom to see things as they are, and the temperance to choose your actions rather than being chosen by your impulses. This is the opposite of manipulation. It is the embodiment of integrity. When you operate from this place of inner alignment, your presence naturally becomes a calming force. You are no longer trying to disarm the other person. You have disarmed the conflict itself by refusing to provide the emotional fuel it needs to survive. You become like the eye of a hurricane, a sphere of perfect calm around which the storm of emotion may rage, but cannot penetrate. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who understood the nature of freedom better than most, offered a final thought that captures this entire philosophy. He said, "Freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire. There is the ultimate secret, the freedom you seek, the freedom from being emotionally hijacked, from losing your peace, from saying and doing things you later regret, is not found in a world where everyone is nice to you. It is forged in the disciplined furnace of your own mind, by learning to control the desires and aversions that once controlled you. This is the truest form of power, a power that can never be taken away because it exists entirely within your own choices." Now, as we conclude, I want to speak directly to you. What we've covered here is not a quick fix or a simple life hack you can master in a week. This is a lifelong practice, a continuous journey of returning to your principles, of falling down and getting back up, of learning and relearning the art of being human. The path to self-mastery is walked one step at a time, so please do not feel you need to implement every single idea at once. That would be overwhelming. Instead, I encourage you to choose just one principle that resonated most deeply with you today. Perhaps it's the simple act of taking that one deep breath before you react, the Stoic pause. Maybe it's the practice of reframing your perception, of seeing the person behind the provocation, or it could be the commitment to asking a curious question instead of launching a defense. Whatever it is, pick one, carry it with you into your week, practice it in small, low-stakes moments. Notice what happens. This is how you build the muscle, not through a single heroic effort, but through daily, consistent repetition. This is a path we are walking together. I would love to hear about your experiences. Which principle are you going to start with? What challenges are you facing? Share your thoughts and your own insights in the comments below. Let's create a conversation about how we can all live with a little more grace and a little less conflict. And if you found this guidance valuable, if you're ready to go deeper into this way of living, consider subscribing to this channel. We have so much more to explore together, more wisdom from the Stoics, more practical exercises, and more support for your journey toward a life of quiet strength and unwavering peace. Thank you for your time and your commitment to your own growth. Remember, the power to disarm any situation has been within you all along. It starts and ends with the mastery of the one thing you truly